Welcome to my video on 1992's The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Yes, The Hand That Rules the World. I am gonna start with a review that's gonna have zero spoilers, and then I will get into a spoiler section. I'm not gonna be spoiling. I am aware there is a more recent version. It is possible I will do a video on it. Definitely am considering it, but haven't watched it yet. Definitely not spoiling it in this video. The movie's rated R, so will this video be. And so I think the word guilty pleasure does apply. I kind of fucking love this movie. I am aware that it's not entirely unproblematic. I actually have notes for this video that date back to 2017. Now, I know what you're thinking. Have I seriously been wanting to make this video for 8 fucking years? No, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. It must have been at least 16 because that's how long I've been making videos. And yeah, I watched this not right after it came out because I would not have. I'm not quite old enough for it to have been, but I definitely watched it at some point in the 90s, and I must have watched this like, I don't know, 24 times. I used to have a VHS copy, wore that thing out, so by the time I started making these videos, I had to find another way to watch it. Looked like it was going to be on one website, ended up being on another one. Anyway, yeah. I'm going to start with just talking about how the script is one of the strongest suits of this. There is so much setup and payoff. It's glorious. I'm not going to give away how much or exactly when or whatever, but there's at least one scene of this where they do such an amazing job using setup and payoff. And it's not really ever lackluster in that regard. I'm gonna be honest about there are definitely some shortcomings, but it does fantastic on that. You know, the 90s sometimes were a little hit and miss when movies. There are some where they kind of just say no, people are gonna accept it, and sometimes people did, and we got more that wasn't particularly, well done. This is one of those movies where you can definitely take issue with its politics, and there are aspects where there are certain things where some kind of glaring, for example, factual errors. And I'm not usually, I try not to let myself be distracted by it, but there are a couple here where, I don't know if I'm going to go over all of them. The IMDb goof section lists. I don't think I've thought of one that wasn't in there. So, if you want to make sure you catch all of them, that's where to go. But what it sets out to do, it really, really nails. Like, everything in this movie, at least on a screenplay level, carefully constructed to achieve its goal. It is a very efficient machine. There is not an ounce of fat on this thing. It is like a very, very tight, I think it's maybe 110 minutes or less than that, and there's just not any wasted material at all. Like, it's, that's part of why I've watched this thing so many fucking times. It's genuinely impressive. Now, yeah, I think... So, like I said, I'm keeping the review itself spoiler-free, so I'm just going to vaguely talk about... I will talk about the, yeah, once I get into the spoiler section. I will try to discuss everything thing that I feel I have something to say about. But one thing that's definitely happening here, and that I can say without spoiling anything, this was made at a time when, the middle class and the suburbs were very much this aspirational thing. Not everybody had access to it, but if you were young and white in America, you probably wanted it or felt like it's just out of reach. But or you were like a child or a teenager, I guess. Maybe you weren't thinking stuff like that. But if you were thinking about like, where do you want to live? What kind of job do you want? That sort of thing. Yeah, a lot of white people really, really wanted that. So it was obviously very fertile ground for psychological horror. I have long been fascinated with the suburbs. I don't live in one, never have, and almost definitely never will. But, there's... I don't think I'm going to spend forever on it, but I will just briefly note Todd Solondz made several fantastic movies exploring, I believe I remember the direct quote, the hell of suburbia. Welcome to the Dollhouse is one major example. Let's see. Goddamn, I have not watched Happiness in like 20 years. If I recall, that's also one of them. It's clearly a theme that's on his mind, In general, I haven't really disliked any Todd Solondz, though I'm willing to acknowledge storytelling is not, like, the very best. There's a couple of things that could be at least slightly better about it. But at this point, I really have to mention, Chloe Deschanel on Nebula made fantastic videos. At least one of them is about Todd Solondz, and she also made a couple of others, her videos on... Oh, shit, I don't think I remember his name. The guy who worked with Divine, I think her name was. Let's see. Pink Flamingos, among others. John Waters, that's it. Really excellent videos. Really helped me appreciate... I didn't always understand John Waters. I've watched a couple of his films. Anyway, but yes. So we have the hell of suburbia in, for example, Todd Solondz films, and then we have this other, where it's not that suburbia is, confining and essentially a gilded cage, but it is aspirational. And this is one of multiple movies that have protagonists that already have achieved this, life. And the threat is, might they lose it? And that's obviously really, really, if we were talking like medieval times, it's like someone's storming the castle or something. It's like, what do you do if you can't be safe there? And they really understand what makes how could it be taken away from someone? How could they lose it in a way that feels that actually touches on anxieties, rather than inventing some silly scenario where it becomes fantastical. Those sorts of things can be amazing. A lot of my favorite movies are like that, but not the case here. And it also it is not really a movie that particularly criticizes suburbia. Suburbia is essentially heaven on earth. And yeah, it's genuinely just about, might protagonists lose this, wonderful place. And as a far leftist, I do these days like my movies to be more critical of, you know, class disparity and such. It's actually kind of fun. So I watched this on Disney Plus. One of the movies that are in the suggested tab is Ready or Not, which is kind of like the fucking opposite of this, but I mean, it has different take on similar themes, I guess. Like, it's still about, like, well, it's aspirational, that's not quite suburbia, but yeah, class, yeah. Anyway, let's see. There's definitely more to say about the script. So, yeah, some of the ways that it really establishes, it's just like amazing to live in the suburbs. The protagonist is Claire Bartel. She's on a first name basis with nearly everyone she interacts with, and like friendly with, she'll go to a place to have something done for her, and they know each other's names and talk like they're friends rather than, she pays them to do work for her. It's genuinely just like, I'm not sure that many people really live like this, but it is obviously a very appealing fantasy, Like, it's this idea of, it's almost like a village. Everyone, it's a small town kind of thing. Everyone knows each other, and it's the positive depiction of that. Everyone's friendly with each other. And the nearly everyone. It's not zero conflict, but it's much more, yeah. And I think yeah. So the core setup is one of those things where, is it likely? Maybe not. But it is something that we feel some emotional connection to, like, I've shown this movie to several people, and not all of them ended up loving it, but none of them just felt nothing about any of the characters and situations and such, and I would say most of them were, felt what the movie wanted them to feel. And the I think, yeah, the catharsis is strong in this one. Like, holy crap, you really get into it. And yeah, I'm not gonna give it in the non-spoiler section at least, but the elevator pitch is quite compelling here as well. I think, let's see, I think the first time I found out about this, it was one of those TV commercials for, hey, we're showing this movie on this evening. And I'm not sure it was more than 30 seconds or something, but in that time, it conveyed the concept. And I was like, I have to fucking watch this movie. Yeah. So the psychological accuracy, a lot of the way, very, very impressive. It definitely does reflect, there are a couple of things here that we understand better today. So, that's one thing. If I watch the more recent one, I'll be fascinated to see how they updated some of this stuff. Right. Oh, fuck. If you haven't watched enough of my videos to know, I am absolutely not one of those people who say, oh, it's dated, so it's bad. No, no, no. Like I said, I fucking love this movie. I am absolutely not saying that it's a bad film. I'm going to discuss some of the dated aspects, but like, oh, fuck. I think it's been a while since I mentioned, I literally just finished rewatching this when I hit record on this video. It is very fresh in my mind. I'm not going off like rose-tinted glass memories or something. No. I remember it vividly, and the let's see, the authenticity. It's one of those things. Like I said, there's a couple of glaring issues with realism. It is one of those cases where it does somewhat create another world that is in most ways similar to either the real world or at the very least the conception of suburbia in the minds of those who want to live that life. But yeah, most of the time it is very authentic, and it certainly is true to itself. And I do think there is a lot to that. There's just a couple of things where I wish they had adjusted it just a tiny bit to make it work a little bit better, but yeah. The level of detail is also quite good. And like I said, there's nothing here that shouldn't be here. It all adds up. There's a couple of things where like for a while it's like, is this going somewhere? But by the end, I would argue everything that it sets up, it does pay off in some way. And the tone. This is, so I think I already mentioned it's a psychological thriller. It does have some of the 90s melodrama. Not as much as some others, but I think it is the right amount for the genre and what it's trying to do. I can appreciate some might feel that it is simply excessive, especially if you're not used to 90s movies. Like, that is something, every so often I sit down and watch a 90s movie because I don't want to forget how they made them back then, because that was my decade. That was, I was experiencing so many new pieces of media during that, and many of them were made during that decade, and not all of them were great, but I haven't forgotten that many movies that were made in the 90s that, yeah. Now, I think that does pretty much, that just leaves the dialogue before we move on from the writing. Yeah, they do a really great job on having these little things where there's definitely a couple of times where there's exposition. Someone will say something because they don't know how else to establish it. But most of the time it works. And I would say a lot of the time when that happens, it feels organic. Like it's someone pointing something out that maybe bothers them, or bringing something to someone else's attention, that sort of thing, rather than just two people saying things to each other that both of them already know, that really annoying kind of exposition. And I would also argue they do a quite good job of spreading the exposition, because overall, like if someone did like a supercut of all the exposition in this, it would probably be several minutes. But when that's spread out over, as mentioned, like almost 110 minutes, it doesn't feel like, like you pick it up, but you don't necessarily think about, was that exposition? Was that technically, am I being expositioned here? And let's see. I thought they did a good job of having people talk more or less the way people talk in the real world. And they talk about things that people talk about in reality. Which again, not saying that always needs to be the case in movies and other pieces of media, but for this, where it is very much like, it feels like almost a campsite ghost story kind of thing. Like, this is the kind of, someone's gonna, retell this movie with a flashlight under their chin, being like, have you heard about the time? Is just so spot on for that. So that's the writing, as mentioned, really, really strong in most ways. The direction is another really... Oh, right, I guess I should briefly note, I am not really familiar with the other work of the writer. If I recall correctly. Oh, did they write? God damn it. My wrists are too fucking sore to check right now. I forget if maybe they also wrote Single White Female. I did watch that one. It's been so long, I'm not really going to be able to compare them. I remember liking it at the time. It's one of those, if I really, like, if I sit down and read a plot summary, I'll remember it. But I can't really recommend, I can't compare, like, stylistically, you know. Don't remember it well enough for that. But yeah, the direction is another really strong suit. R.I.P. Curtis Hanson. Obviously, I don't think I even have to say it out loud, but just so no one feels the need to point out in the comments, yes, La Confidential, I mean LA Confidential, is better than this. I have to admit, that has also been a very long time. I think I only watched that movie once. So, but I do remember noting, okay, this is technically better. And the I think it might have been one of those cases where I didn't fully appreciate it when I watched it, and so, you know, I am considering rewatching and doing a video on it now. And I know not everybody loves 8 Mile. I haven't watched that movie in like 10, 15 years, I guess, but I used to really love it. But yeah, the direction, like, throughout, we really feel almost always what they want us to feel from what's happening. Even though, like, sometimes afterwards we're like, ugh, I was kind of manipulated. That's not how I would normally feel about that kind of thing in the real world. But it just fucking works. And you can follow, like, every major development. You can follow how we got there. You know, I'll grant there's at least one where it is perhaps convenient that we didn't get there sooner, but when we get there, you know, we immediately understand, oh, right, because of the thing with the, yeah, okay. And yeah, part of that is the way that, you know, the cinematography and editing, there are things where you don't necessarily see the thing happen, but you understand how it could have, and you either realize it even when we're not being shown it, but when it's technically happening just off screen, or we, you know, afterwards we're like, oh, because of that. Okay. There's never a time in this where something just comes out of the blue. And again, sometimes that works in other movies. I do not think it would have worked as well here. And it really does, like, one of the things that is accomplished by us always being able to follow it is that we're essentially just sitting back and witnessing this thing that we so badly want stopped, you know. And, like, there's power in when something does come out of the blue. I'm not going to go off on a thing about jump scares. I think Thought Slime said everything that I would, but yeah, the short version is that sometimes they absolutely work. They're not always a bad thing. But that can more work as a thing of, like, you know, oh, you didn't see that coming. Like, you know, you might have felt safe, but there was something there. But here, we know. And that's really fucking creepy, you know? It's right there. And just, like, yeah. So cinematography, it's this really great way that it is aware of dramatic and drastic camera work, but it knows not to overuse them. And I appreciate some would say, like with the melodrama, that there's too much. I would, you know, as long as you're okay with 90s style, 100%. I do not blame anyone who's like, okay, this is just ridiculous, And yeah, the editing also, the way that sometimes a shot will linger, sometimes something will move fairly fast. Like I wouldn't necessarily say like frenetic, at least never for very long at a time, but yeah. And just I think I'm gonna go ahead and just very briefly note. So the very opening of this are these serene, quiet, not lifeless but safe, even though for several of them we don't actually see anyone there, any there's no living beings, but we're just seeing like suburbia, and it just feels safe and secure. And yeah, before we meet the characters, we see where they live, so we understand what might be taken from them, and the way that yeah, it's a fantastic, because like a lot of movies will open by establishing the setting. That's fairly straightforward, movie making 101 kind of thing. But if you can also make it feel like, oh, is this something that these characters might lose? Is there some kind of, danger there? That can be really, really beneficial to the film. And like, as the movie starts, you're not necessarily even thinking that like consciously. It might just plant it, so later, without even thinking about it, like you're thinking, oh, I hope they're able to keep this, and the production value is quite strong. It never feels cheap. It never feels like they're cutting corners or anything, and also doesn't feel ostentatious. And yeah, set design, locations, and costumes and makeup do a really solid job of communicating things about the characters. I've already mentioned we see where the protagonists live as the first thing, so immediately you do get a sense of like, because there's no rebellion there. It's like, yeah, it's white, very, and it's one of those things where, I don't always talk what's it called, color theory, I think, but yeah, white, it's seen as pure, which, considering the fact that a bunch of racist pieces of shit call themselves white when, I mean, our skin is pink. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And also claim purity when their ancestors that they celebrate have done some of the worst things that human beings have ever done to each other. So, moving on. And yeah, it does a good job of using that. There are multiple settings, and the it's the appropriate amount. Like, you might see where someone works, for example. You might see where they go to accomplish a task. I can't really go into details without spoiling, but yeah. And yeah, you get a real sense of it, and it genuinely is so well done that these places don't feel inherently threatening. They're not ominous. They feel safe. Like, this feels like you could go out at night without, weapon, or, any kind of, you could just walk around the neighborhood and you'd be safe, kind of thing, and like I said, I'm not sure how many places that's actually real or ever has been, but that's how it feels. Like, this movie, the setting itself feels like a big warm hug. You feel so just at ease, and then it upsets it with something I don't think I'm going to spoil in the non-spoiler review itself. But yeah, it's so effectively done. And again, sometimes some of the horror comes from where they are. Not that it's something you're afraid of losing, but it feels, like a potentially scary, unpleasant place, already. I think, yeah, it's not really a spoiler to say, the first Hellraiser, for example, some of the locations feel very threatening inherently, and that movie derives very effective horror from that. Now, I think the music, my God, that is where a lot of the tension and suspense comes, along with the cinematography and editing and acting. The music sometimes will use shrill tones, and that's, it's well documented fact. We do not like shrill tones. It really puts us ill at ease. We feel very uncomfortable with, and it is like, there is of course of evolutionary purpose to that. It can be sign of danger. And other times, I want to say, I think it's like a bass. I'm not the best at, picking out instruments and stuff like that, but yeah, it's used incredibly well. Honestly, this is one of those, I would listen to the soundtrack without watching the movie, honestly. And I think the sound design. So, okay, so there's one thing. I'm not going to give it away in this, and I'll talk about it in the spoiler section, I think. But and if not, it's brought up in the IMDb goof section, certainly, if I forget. There is one issue where the sound design is a little awkward, but most of the time it is fantastic. It really, really nails both the comfort and the, when there is danger. It just completely nails it, because that's one of those things. Comfort can be very difficult to do sound design for, because what does it sound like? Because it's not an absence of sound. That can be off-putting, because we're like, is something wrong? Why can't I hear anything? That's also, so it's soft sounds, it's ambient noises and such, and yeah, they do such an amazing job. And yeah, the characters, this is very much one of those where they're not the most interesting on their own. They're almost archetypes, essentially, bordering on cliches. I will 100% grant there are other movies that have more compelling characters. The acting, I'm not going to detail it, but this is my favorite. Before I get into the spoiler section, I mean, this is my favorite performance by Rebecca De Mornay. And it's honestly not even close. I'll talk some about some of her other, in the spoiler section. I intend to, at least. But the, yeah. And I have to admit, I'm barely familiar with the rest of the cast. So it's difficult for me to compare too much. I would say everyone does at least a pretty good job. No one's just like terrible, in my opinion. Yeah, I think I'll briefly... It is one of those cases where, they needed a performance that was of a certain level of quality, at least, out of Madeline Zima. And in my opinion, they got it. I have seen her in a couple of other things. Wow, is it really only the one? Okay, I've seen at least one other thing. And this was like she's credited as introducing, so I do think this was the very first thing she acted in, and it's no wonder that she got other work. Yeah, and it's one of those cases. I appreciate some would probably say, she's not asked to do that much. It's not nothing though, and so if I say considering her age, it's going to sound like a backhanded compliment. Considering her age is not something I'm going to say. She genuinely does a good job. I agree that there are perhaps one or two slightly awkward things. I would argue it's just the writing of the character. It's how she was directed, basically. And it's one of those cases. If you're trying to pick out bad acting that's the fault of the actor not having enough talent, look at if they're consistent, because that's often where it's, if a character is consistently badly acted, it might be the director who's just not doing that good of a job at that. A bad actor where it's the fault of the actor's talent or lack thereof, there's probably something that they're doing better than other stuff. That's the thing that they've done the most work at preparing for, maybe, or they're most familiar with feeling that in real life, so they have an easier time with it, stuff like that. Because that's the thing, like if the actor is technically capable of more and the director can see, this isn't quite working, they're going to talk to the actor and get a better performance out of them for the parts that they weren't already excelling at. Ernie Hudson plays a character who has a so I'm not going to use the R slur. I think that is what they're going for. They don't really ever 100% spell it out. Let's see. One of the characters describes it. Did they maybe say special or something? They use a euphemism, But yeah, it would appear that he is. And I'm not the first person to argue. It would appear he is playing that kind of, someone with that disability. And at times it is a little bit offensive. It's definitely, that's something, there's a number of movies today that would do a better job at being sensitive about it, unless they were like R-rated comedies or something. It's not supposed to be funny, and it's not purposefully funny. I think there are times where it does feel a little too silly and ends up, but it is one of those cases also. I think today there's a good chance they would cast someone who actually does have a, some kind of, rather than, if you see him in other roles, he clearly does not actually have a disability resembling, but it definitely doesn't feel like they're trying to be assholes about it. He is, he's characterized as friendly and, a little naive, has a goofy sense of humor kind of thing. It's not trying to say they're heroes among men, but it's definitely not saying that they're like terrible or something. And I think that is, Claire and her husband Michael, they're good. I'm not sure I'm really familiar with them from anything else. I wouldn't mind seeing something else they're in. I mean, it's not necessarily the kind of thing where I'm like, okay, I gotta watch more. I mean, comparatively, as soon as I watched this, I was like, this is not going to be the last Rebecca De Mornay movie I ever watch, and it wasn't. And yeah, the pacing is very impressive. Like, they really do everything. There are times where it moves faster than others, and I would argue it always makes sense for it when they make that choice. It's never just that, okay, we're getting impatient, let's rush through something, you know. And it's not like every movie that, you know, off the top of my head, Office Space, you know, there's a lot I love about that movie. I'm willing to acknowledge there are times where it's clearly rushing through something because, like, they maybe realized, oh, this is not playing as well as we thought it would. Let's just trim it down as much as we can, kind of thing, you know. And it does end up feeling awkward, you know, and that never happens here. And I'm willing to acknowledge, you know, I wouldn't really necessarily say this is like a flaw or something, but yeah, if you're used to more recent movies, let's see, maybe the first half hour of this can feel a little slow compared to more recent stuff where, you know, yeah, today movies are um, even more efficient a lot of the time yeah. And, you know, just something to be aware of, not really a criticism of this. Yeah, I think that does pretty much. So yeah, as a psychological thriller, you know, they really sat down and thought of what are things that, you know, yeah, in the suburbs, where could there be something that is disturbing in some way, and what would you especially not want to lose? How could you lose it? These sorts of things, and they really build wonderfully. Like, this is a movie that understands sometimes in order for something to hit especially hard, you have to be willing to delay gratification. You can't just immediately jump directly into the biggest stuff, but bigger stuff is coming. You know, as mentioned, it doesn't get as big as other 90s. I mean, fuck me. This was the decade of, you know, Con Air and Face Off, which I appreciate also. Those are action movies, so obviously they're going to get bigger. But yeah, I think that does pretty much. Yeah, the stuff that gets at the R rating, I would argue it's not gratuitous. It feels earned. And there's not so much of it that it does get to a point of being like, just like, okay, that's enough kind of thing. And I think that does. Yeah, I'm not going to discuss them before I get into the spoiler section. The politics are slightly mixed. I will discuss them, but yeah, just be aware of that. And yeah, I rate this 8 threats to the comforts of the suburbs out of 10. And I'm going to get into the spoiler thoughts section now. So from here on out, I am spoiling absolutely everything about this movie. So I'm going to start just by noting that we have the, yeah, what's the good, the way that it uses, there we go. Yeah, the way that it uses Rebecca de Mornay, because her eyes are fire and ice, as in there's passion and there's emotional coldness. And the way she'll just, like, she has such perfect command of every muscle in her face, the way that she'll smile in a way that we can buy. Yeah, the Bartels just think she's being nice and sweet, but we, the audience, can tell, oh, she's fucking plotting, just absolutely amazing. In my opinion, this is the best use of her, talents as an actress. I've seen her do well at other things. I've seen her play much more, shit, what's it called again? Oh, right. Do I have it in the... God damn it. I think I wrote it down somewhere. Okay, I'm just real quick going to see. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. Fuck did I put it? Here we go. Yeah. So the... Yeah. Never Talk to Strangers. She's the more, like... what's the word? She's like demure and mindful. And I do think she does well at that as well. But yeah, just like having her be this like cruel and sadistic, like, my God, the way she treats Solomon, the way that she is just so fucking good. She's such a compelling villain. And it's just like, yeah, she is quite good in the 1990s Three Musketeers as well, but it does feel slightly like, well, I could just be watching Hand of the Cradle, though. But, her and Tim Curry, they do make wonderful villains, as they always do. And it's very cool to have them in a movie together. I think that does cover the, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna real quick go over. So like I mentioned, I have some notes. The, let's see. Yeah, it's a very attemptive fake out when did I say it right? Effective fake out when, it at first looks like she's going to smother Joe when she's alone with him. Yeah, that was... And let's see, one of the keys to keeping one of these compelling long after when it first came out, thrills look very different today than they did in the 90s. It's a good idea to have, let's go with set pieces, and yeah, the evil actions taken by the dangerous character need to be memorable. I think Malice, while definitely well made, lacks this, and this film, we've got the greenhouse murder, all the windows slamming shut, shards of glass raining down. Like, there's at least one shot where it looks like the we're about to be impaled. Like, I don't know if they planned that or that was a lucky accident, but the moment that someone saw, like, I know as soon as someone yelled cut, there was like complete silence, and then someone was like, tell me we got that, and they were like, we have got to put that in the fucking movie. I don't care what we have to do, because that's so fucking cool. And, the climax with her being impaled on, the positive symbol of the safety and comfort of suburban life, the white picket fence, is it meant to keep people in or out? Well, mostly keep people out. They wouldn't have wanted someone like Peyton in their home. And the wish fulfillment scene of Peyton, going up to, what's his name again, Roth or something, and grabs his arm, twists it, forces him to agree to not go after the daughter again. She even gets to say fuck, at him, and it ends with the other kids pointing and laughing at him. He's humiliated, and the way Emma looks at the other kid, like, see, aren't I cool? Look who I have on my team, kind of thing. Just like so many parents wish they could get away with doing to the bullies of their kids. A lot of kids wish their parents or they themselves could get away with doing, I'm not saying it's a good thing in real life. Like, obviously, there are better ways to handling bullying and such, but it's undeniably cathartic in a piece of media, And the climax has violence rather than petering out. And it is a relief to know that Gracie Sheffield would go on to get a somewhat better nanny. And let's see. Yeah, I am willing to acknowledge, it's, why don't they find it suspicious that Peyton shows up out of the blue to be a nanny? Nannies talk. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but it feels a little like, yeah. And let's see, why doesn't Claire ask Peyton more questions? This is also something others have brought up, and it could easily have been fixed. Just have a montage, okay, she's a perfect candidate, have her give all perfect answers, but not only one answer. She could fake a lot of that stuff. Let's see, what was okay, I have it here. She leaves out relevant questions like health, personal background, prior jobs, resumes, way with kids, etc. That kind of stuff could have been, And I think she could manipulate someone she knows into helping out with other stuff. It's a Hollywood movie doing the characters feeling a certain way about someone and acting on that, and it is a little silly that that's all that, And I think the right. Oh, I have not watched Fatal Attraction. Cultural osmosis means I do know a lot about it. I love Fatal Instinct back when I watched it a dozen times when it was new. Haven't watched it since. Not sure where the VHS tape is. Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, Disclosure. Man, late 80s and early 90s, Michael Douglas really needed to learn to be faithful. And he doesn't exactly choose women who are the most who are doing well. Like, these are women who need help. And when the movie came out, it was right up my alley. Feminist enough to be about the women, not what's the word? It also is willing to acknowledge, and this is not, like, to be clear, I don't need villains to be women. I really love when, like, a lot of my favorite, when I really love, okay, how do I phrase this so I don't sound ridiculous? I love when a movie has a cishet white man as the villain, and the evil he's engaging in is stuff that people who look and sound like me do in the real world, and that we have to, be honest is happening so that we can improve the culture. It's not stuff that, we just can't help but do. No, it's stuff that some have learned is okay, and we need to unlearn what they have learned. And we can do that. We have the technology. With that said, there are stories where for the villain to not be a cishet white man is, also really useful for exploring things. And today I do realize it is problematic. The villain a woman who's trying to ruin another woman. That is a very like patriarchy, capitalism, bullshit kind of thing. Like, I'm not the first person to note it, and obviously I'm not saying it because like I'm saying it because I've heard feminist women say it. I'm not telling women how to be. I am not. Shit. What's that quote again? I won't run the women's movement, but I'll be an ally in any way I can. You know, I've heard from feminist women that it is much better when women can be friends and work together. Sadly, there are a lot of men who are dangerous to women, and sometimes it's very difficult to tell who they are until it's too late, unless other women are able to communicate it to them. And I'm not saying that that means that when bad things happen, it's because women didn't do enough. Again, first and foremost, we have got to get, you know, and there's a lot of men who have to improve themselves, become better people. And I'm not saying that I was always, and I still have a ways to go. I do still sometimes fuck up, but it is about socialization. And let's see, I think that might be, yeah. Yeah, it's Michael is the one who convinces Claire to press charges, which stops Dr. Mott from victimizing more women. And Peyton's reaction is not the fault of the Bartells. So in that regard, it is more feminist than yeah. Oh shit! Right. God damn. So I mentioned 2017. Originally, I was actually going to review this really close to when Wonder Woman hit theaters. I wrote that in my notes, that it wasn't intentional that I reviewed it so close to Wonder Woman. Wow. And that's when oh shit, was that when it was on Disney Plus and then they moved it off Disney Plus for a while. That's why I didn't do it years ago, but I forget if that was 2017 or later. I think 2017 it was on another service, and it turned out didn't work for some fucking reason. I don't remember. It also isn't important. And let's see. Yeah, definitely does, have a few incredibly sensitive, touchy subjects. Doesn't treat all of them with a lot of respect, opting for shock value and sensationalism instead. And I think yeah, I'll just briefly note. So yeah, others have already noted. Basically, what Claire has isn't asthma; it's panic attacks. And IMDb Goof section explains it more in detail. I just wanted to note. I'll admit I did not know that when this movie came out. I'm not sure if the general populace did. It really only needed to be asthma for the part where she needed, where Peyton empties out a bunch of the inhalers. Otherwise they could have said panic attacks. But yeah, I think people just didn't realize. It's the same way as how, back then, like when I rewatch, I do like some of the comedies from back then, but when they would make fun of people who had like some learning disability or the like, they kind of conflated ADHD with like other kinds of, so like, yeah, as someone who's always had ADHD, though it wasn't diagnosed immediately, yeah, it feels a little weird to be like, every so often there'll be a joke about like, oh, look at this person, they can't even focus, and it's like, neither can I, but like, doesn't mean that I can't learn anything. Like, it feels a little, yeah, they like to group in, a lot of American media likes to shame people who don't live up to standard for what they want out of worker drones. You're less able to earn them wealth if you struggle to learn things. So they try to bully people into either somehow being better at learning, which a lot of the time doesn't fucking work, and we should find other solutions anyway, or just make them give up hope for having a fucking future, which just like, god damn it, so many fucking problems start with capitalism. I think, right, so right, let's see, actually, I think I want to go over the, right, Rebecca de Mornay had been angling for the part of Tinkerbell in Hook, and she lost it to Julia Roberts, and that prompted her to actively seek something a little darker instead. And Kevin Spacey was considered for the role of Michael Bartel. Like, I can see de Mornay as Tinkerbell. I don't think it's as interesting as this. I don't like to say, I'm glad I didn't get that job, but I think it was better this way. This and other of her work, I genuinely think the very best is when she just does this kind of fucked up. Yeah. Anyway, so that was, let's see. Right, Kevin Spacey. Yeah, I mean, he did sometimes do, I mean, Michael Bartel in this, and then his role in, fuck's that movie called again? The one where he's obsessed with a teenage girl. And then later on we find out, yeah, he actually is really fucked up in real life. Not only some of the roles he takes, which, to be clear, I'm not saying, like, some people who aren't fucked up in real life do take fucked up roles. I'm not trying to say that one follows the other automatically. Anyway, American Beauty, I think it's called, yeah. I will admit, when I first watched that movie, I fucking fell for it. And then later I was like, oh, that's really fucked up. But others have already gone over how it's, yeah. And it's too bad because it's got some really talented actors in it. Anyway, let's see. Right. So about Rebecca de Mornay, identity underuses her in a way that I think someone should press charges. And I think that might, yeah, that does more or less cover the, I have to admit, I do not remember. Oh, wow, now I don't even remember. I think she did at least one Tom Cruise movie. I do not remember that movie. I think I watched it, but that was like 25, 30 years ago, so I do not remember it. I think that was maybe before I'd even watched this, so I wasn't noticing her that much. Now, this film does truly waste John Delancey. So amazing in TNG for the nerds, Star Trek: The Next Generation, if you're nasty, in a role here that anyone could have played. He does do it well. I will definitely say that. It's not one of those cases. Right, one critic says, de Mornay's films is a wicked treat. Looking daggers at her enemy one moment, then glazing over the sweetness the next, which is very much what we expected from these kinds of, villain characters. Right, at least one person does straight up call it, and so I can't compare, but yeah, they say it's a poor man's Fatal Attraction, so it's possible that that is the case. I'm not going to lie, I'm not sure I would love Fatal Attraction more than I love this, but that, I don't know, if I had watched it back then, yeah. Oh, right. So someone noted, I think it would be more compelling to start the movie with de Mornay as a mysterious woman. Claire can uncover her history along with the audience. That actually could have been really cool. Yeah, not gonna lie, that's really. Oh, right. One person said, Peyton's certainly not Mary Poppins. That is very true. She's not as terrifying as that, but she comes close. And yeah, one person noted, that it's what's the word? It's spoon feeding, for the answers for the mystery rather than letting stuff be more. Yeah, I think those are all the prepared notes. So the rest is going to be off the cuff. Yeah. So let's see. There we go. I guess it's pretty much time to go scene by scene. Yes. So right. I guess I'll just briefly note. I don't remember enough about. I think my parents did take me to the musical when I was a kid. But yeah, almost 30 years ago by now, maybe even 30 years. Wow, now I don't even remember what it's called. HMS Pinafore, I don't think is the name of the thing, but that's the ship, right? But the yeah. Anyway, I can't really comment on if there's because it comes up several times. They'll sing the some of it and such. I mean, no, I do not know that musical. Yeah, let's go with that. But I will say, yeah, the way that, so basically, one of the first things we see of people moving is Michael and Emma singing. And I've said this before, and call me corny, call me a big old softy. I do think it is wonderful when parents sing with their kids. Some of my favorite childhood memories are singing with my parents. So just like, yeah, it's great to see. And again, like immediately we see that they have a very positive relationship. Like a lot of kids would be like, can I do something else? But no, she wants to be there and she knows the lyrics. This is something they've done before. Maybe this is how they start every morning. And yeah, it's, and it's the, is that called call and response maybe? Or am I misusing that? But, because one of the parts we hear them sing is the thing, I'm never ever sick at sea. What never? No, never. What never? Well, hardly ever, and just, yeah, it's so gratifying when you're a kid and like adults pay attention to you, and if you say or do something, they actually respond to it instead of ignoring you. So yeah, it's very clear, just and it's also like, yeah, he has to shave every so often. That's a thing we have to do. Why not make it fun, and yeah, the let's see, then we have, yeah, and we see Solomon. That's also one of the first time we see movement in the film. We don't see his face yet, but we see someone cycling, and they arrive at the house and they go up to the door, and then they're moving around the yard, and she gets scared, and so she calls for Michael, and he immediately goes out there. And so again, we like from right away so subtly plants, if there's going to be a threat to this sweet little family unit, it's going to come from outside. They are not in conflict with each other. There starts to be something later, but it's not that they just inherently have problems. There's little things that can be poked and prodded at, and Peyton does that, but if not for her doing that, they would be fine, And as soon as Claire feels scared, she's comfortable calling him. That's also like there are a number of women who, if they feel threatened by someone else, they're scared that if they bring their male partner into it, he's going to escalate it into violence. And that doesn't make them safer. You know, he might think, oh, but this is how I make her feel safe. No, it just means that she can't come to you, and maybe she can't go to anyone when she is scared of someone. And sometimes others will perceive that and choose to, you know, target her. But yeah, you know, she calls him, and it's also very notable, he does not escalate it to violence. He goes out, you know, he like let's see, he like yeah, he verbally confronts him, and yeah, make sure, you know, he's like, what are you doing here? Who are you? Something like that, you know. And then, you know, he brings him in and says he's here from the Better Day Society. You know, it's just like there was no violence, and it's yeah. So again, very very nicely done, and I do think it is noteworthy. You know, she is scared of Solomon there at the very start. She doesn't fear Peyton until a while after meeting her, and it genuinely is just that Peyton is better at masking, because both of them, and to be clear, I'm not saying they're on the same level, obviously not, but the movie does position both of them as people from the outside who there's something about. And with Solomon, the movie makes sure to make clear there's not anything wrong with him. You know, he has a learning disability, but as long as he it genuinely clearly is a positive that the Better Day Society is doing this, and it is a positive in the real world as well. And yeah, you know, he's a little too naive to understand. You know, you can't walk around in someone's yard. Like if you knock on the door or ring the doorbell and you don't get a response right away, you can't just start walking around on their property like that. If they don't know that you're like, if they don't already know you, like, okay, if they know you and you maybe walk up to a window and like try to wave, try to get their attention or something, that's okay, but you can't just do that. And he just doesn't understand that. But as soon as that becomes clear, it's a misunderstanding. That's all. He had no intention of doing anything wrong. He just, you know, he had been so like, okay, you go there and you make them a fence. And he's like, well, where are they? What do I do now? You know, and so he naively, you know, and yeah. And Peyton, you know, she positions herself as a helper from right away. And she's like, oh, I stopped the school bus. Now, you know, Emma can get her coat. And yeah, just really, really nicely done. And the fact that, yeah, the very last thing we see in the movie is Peyton impaled, dying. You know, she'll never be a threat to them again. And Solomon, you know, at first he's like, you know, oh, but you said to not hold. To be clear, I'm not trying to do an impersonation or anything. You know, he says, you told me not to hold the baby, though. And she says, it's okay, I trust you. And then, you know, they walk off, and he's standing there with the baby. Line? What's the direction? And Emma's like, come on, Solomon. He's part of the family. You know, they said earlier they're going to find something else for him to do around the house, you know? It's not that there was no room in this family unit for another member. It's that it needs to be a good person, not an evil person, not a person who chooses evil. And as such, yeah, by the end, you know, because we meet both of them very early on. They're both, you know, pretty major characters. She has more screen time, but they're both in a lot of the movie. And yeah, they don't reject him at the end once they know the truth. And it's also one of those things where the way it's you know, handled, like, yeah, I can believe, you know, she realizes, no, it was Peyton. Peyton framed him. He did not do anything. So yeah, that's the, and it is also, I wish it were the case more in the real world, but sadly, the thing about like how the Better Day Society gives him jobs elsewhere, there's a lot of people who would not. If they're accused of something they didn't do, that's it. They just can't get work after that. And I think this is a good time to talk about. So obviously, it's very... I am willing to acknowledge that one of the things the movie is doing is one of the most prominent, the single most prominent black character is falsely accused of rape, child rape even, and the movie bends over backwards to make clear he didn't do it and he is harmless. And an argument could be made that part of how it wants to underline how harmless he is by choosing to have him be, have a learning disability. And that is a little, yeah. I mean, Obama hadn't been elected president, so racism hadn't been started. Republicans can't really make up their mind on what exact impact he had on racism, but either way, obviously, it is complete absurdity that, he didn't start racism. He didn't end racism. No one person can. Also, to be clear, I'm absolutely not saying he's perfect. Yeah, a lot of my fellow far lefties right here on YouTube have done really solid videos talking about the things he did wrong. I don't really have anything to add to it, but yeah. Anyway, the fact that Trump was elected twice, no less, after, because a bunch of Republicans sure couldn't have a woman be president. And I'm also not claiming that Hillary or Kamala were perfect candidates. I much would have preferred someone much further to the left, but it's completely absurd to give the fact that he could be elected anything more than dog catcher. I don't know. I'm sorry. I think I take that back. He shouldn't even be elected dog catcher, dog walker, whatever. That really proves how fucking racist a lot of Americans still are. The fact that they would rather have someone that someone so incompetent could be elected just because he's a white guy and he promises, he appeals to their racism and he overpromises and underdelivers. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. I think there's a very interesting alternate version of this movie where instead of having a learning disability, he is an ex-con, and that's how he's getting these sorts of jobs, because that's, again, a thing where a lot of them are not actually dangerous, but they don't get much of a chance to reintegrate into society, and that's part of why recidivism is so high, But yeah. The false accusation. It is very important to note there is not actually an epidemic of false rape accusations ruining the lives of the men accused. Data Mail did maybe more than one. He did at least one video talking about it, and just, it's fantastic. I would absolutely butcher the points he makes, but yeah. If you want to have more detail about why it's not true, please watch this video. Heavily recommended by me. But yeah, there is some issue where some white women will accuse black men, and like historically there was a time where the black man would then be lynched, and so that's obviously something that they're getting into here. It's not a lynching, but it is, it harms the yeah, he was welcomed in by the Bartell family, and Peyton ruins that by this false accusation. And I do think the fact that the movie ends with him becoming like a part of the family does help to communicate, when someone is falsely accused, we, if they truly did not do it, then it shouldn't ruin their life. And it is very clear that, the problem here was a white woman who knew she could get something out of, falsely accusing a black man. And that has sometimes been, I'm not saying that that's like, hashtag not all white women. And it is also very important to note, it is not a movie that says all white women. Claire only believes it when she finds what appears to be incontrovertible evidence. Ultimately, it is circumstantial evidence, but we understand why she believes it, And yeah, there are other white women characters in the movie who are not evil, and they don't do that. They accept him back as soon as they realize for sure he didn't do it, So it's criticizing the behavior. It's not saying everyone who belongs to this group is, because it's not even, childless women. Because what about Marlene? She's not evil. She's not even like, yeah, she's not even particularly close to being evil. She's, yeah, there's not really anything wrong there. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think that does cover the, I think it is noteworthy that Peyton is the only one who uses the R slur, and she calls him it to his face and doesn't apologize or anything. Like, she is genuinely, like, the movie does such a great job of making her this dark mirror reflection of Claire, and that is like, from the ground up, that's how this character is built. She lost her husband, she lost her baby, she lost her house, and now she's trying to take those things from Claire one by one. And right after meeting, Claire, as soon as she realizes, oh, okay, he's not like a burglar or something, which is, of course, if you see someone you don't know just running around on your property, yeah, that might be your first thought. As soon as she realizes that's not the case, she's like, oh, hello, let me shake your hand. And the whole Peyton meets him, and they shake hands, and he accidentally gets a little paint on her clothes, and the fucking thunder in her eyes, like, Jesus Christ, and she pretends like, no, it's okay, but like, yeah, clearly she thinks this is the end of the world, and I think that does pretty well bring us to, yeah, so the I really like the way that Emma keeps correcting. They keep calling it the Better Way. Yeah, let's see. First, he comes in as he's with the Better Way Society, and Selma's like, a better day. And after that, every single time they mention it, Michael accidentally, I forget if Claire ever does, but at least one of the parents calls it Better Way, and Emma's like, Better Day. It's such a good, because she's at that age where she is, when she hears something that she knows that's factually inaccurate, she's going to correct it, yeah, very nicely done on that. In general, I think they do a really great job on her characterization because, like, obviously she's not going to have as much plot agency as the adults, but it's crucial that, like, there near the end, we do briefly think, no, Emma, don't tell Peyton where Joe is, and then she doesn't. You're not my mommy, fantastic, So we do need some stuff there. She needs to sometimes call out her parents, for example, and seem to really, for a while, she does really, really love Peyton, but at the end of the day, she does love her mom more. And especially once it comes to like this situation where Peyton comes across as threatening, then it's mommy dearest, So really, really nicely done on that. And yeah, some of it is just these little things where she's correcting them. There's the thing about the watching the movie that she doesn't normally get to. The bully, stuff like that. It's not so much stuff she does as, it's for example what Peyton does and such, but it helps give her character. Like, you walk away from this movie understanding who Emma is, I mean, there's other movies where at least one kid will have more screen time than Emma does, and we walk away not really knowing them because a lot of writers and directors don't really know what to do with child characters. And I'm not saying it's easy, to be clear. It's just one of those things, like, if you don't know what to do with them, try to avoid writing them. That's really all. In general, that's a good rule of thumb. If you don't understand someone, either don't write them or get to a point where you do understand them before. We have enough movies. We probably shouldn't particularly have any movies that just don't understand and aren't even trying to understand the people that it depicts. It doesn't always have to be a positive depiction, but if you do a negative depiction that's incorrect of someone that you should be negatively depicting in another direction, you're going to have people saying, well, that's not what those people are like in real life, and they might think, oh, I guess that person isn't really, potentially dangerous, for example, in real life. Anyway, moving on. So I guess it's not that much of this video that's going to be entirely chronological, is it? I guess we can go back to, yeah, so Claire, very early, it goes to the doctor's appointment, and we have the thing about how, she goes to Dr. Mott, it's the first time, but the nurse assures her he's the best, and he comes in, and he's doing like small talk and such, and then he sends the nurse out. He's like, have you done the paperwork for the next 10 years? Why don't you get on that? Be a dear. And, he says that he's going to examine her. And she points out, I didn't think we were going to do a pelvic exam, what is it, this close to the birth or something like that, And he says he does that the first time he sees any new patient. So that's a choice. And just the way that they handle this scene, there's a little bit of a mix, I'm willing to acknowledge. So again, obviously, so what he does is sexual assault. I'm not going to make any kind of, that's what is going on here. If you haven't already, this is a good time for me to mention a couple of video recommendations. Ofidoki did yet another really excellent video on the misogyny slop ecosystem. What's the Joke with Cynthia Erivo? Fantastic video. Essentially only really relevant because that video and this movie are both in part about misogyny, but yeah. Right, and The Morbid Zoo did yet another solid video. This time she was talking about Predator Badlands, and she is going to do more Predator videos, and I can hardly wait. Yeah, in it she talked in part about, you know, chuds trying to make everything woke so they can have something to complain about. Her impersonation, both the accent, the accent, the voice, and the specific words, her impersonation of the critical drinker was so fucking spot on. You have to see it. Like, if you ever heard the critical drinker for more than a few seconds, first of all, I am so sorry about that. Second of all, it's just like, tell me I'm wrong. Seriously, if you think that she didn't fucking nail it, let me know in the comments, because like my jaw hasn't hit the floor in a little while. So just like, yeah, fantastic. Moving on. Yeah. So sexual assault, very sensitive, very serious subject. And in a way, I definitely do think that it doesn't show more, it's than it has to, at least part of the way, because this is one of those things like, even consensual sex scene can be awkward for the performers and those filming it and such. Sometimes those are important. They convey plot. That is one thing. I am so glad that this did not have a sex scene, because there are times where like you could have easily slipped in a sex scene, you know, right after the rain, you know, there's only one woman for me and that's enough. You could have had something there, but it would have felt out of place. You know, it would have been like, well, we cast conventionally attractive people, you know, and there is like, Rebecca De Mornay can really convey sex appeal in a very striking way. Like, yeah, and does here very, very effectively. And yeah, let's see. So but yeah, having a scene where one character is supposed to be sexually assaulting another character like that can be even more awkward for the performers, you know. And it really doesn't linger that much. And I really appreciate it's not eroticized. You know, it doesn't try to, you know, every so often I wonder when I talk about stuff like that, if someone's going to watch and be like, well, what are you talking about? They would never. Sometimes they do, you know, and including in the 90s. So yeah, I really appreciate that they don't hear. Like, we barely do see, we get like brief shots of her breasts and his hands like on or at least near them. Obviously, we're not going to see, you know, the vaginal penetration. That goes without saying. But they also don't like draw it out, and they never make it seem like she actually wants it. Like, she's uncomfortable from the first moment, and just, yeah. And then, you know, she runs past, like, she has to get the inhaler. Also doing a great job establishing that really early on. You know, becomes very important later. You know, the big, I guess there's kind of two payoffs to the her needing the inhaler, because there's the part where she ends up in the hospital briefly because Peyton emptied them all, and then you also have the part near the end where she fakes having an attack so that Peyton will turn her back on her. You know, never turn your back on me. And yeah, she rushes out. She you know uses the inhaler, and she talks to Michael. And it's one of those things where Michael in this movie, I think they do a smart thing. I can appreciate some people found it frustrating, and not all of those people are misogynistic. He is a little bit useless in this movie. He's trying. I'm not saying he's the only one fooled by Peyton. Essentially, everyone was one point or another. Uh, Maybe less so Marlene, but she's maybe the only person in the entire movie who's just immediate. Like, I don't think even Solomon, he gets a very close look at how harsh she can be right away. He doesn't think from right away that Peyton is dangerous, you know. But anyway, let's see. Yeah, it's not that Michael is the only one fooled. Everyone was fooled, but he really does fairly little to help overall. He does tell her, you have to leave now, we'll send your things to you, and gets the key and such. Oh, actually, I think, didn't Claire have to tell him get the key from her? Just yeah, he's not that, he doesn't accomplish very much, because part of the thing here is that, one of the things she could lose is her husband's trust. He is clearly upset about the proposal. He does think she fucked up, when we realize it was Peyton. But yeah, and then there at the end, he fucking breaks his legs, he just did. And I think it was the right choice, because it's not really his movie. It's important that he's there because he's something that she could lose. But if he was more useful over the course of the movie, then it wouldn't be as necessary. I think it is very purposeful that the day is not saved by the man, the white man, who, in a lot of these movies, he would be the protagonist. There's so many movies where, a man has to protect his family. I'm not saying all of them are bad. I'm just saying there's a fuckload of them. And yeah, Solomon is crucial in helping. He protects Joe. He keeps Joe away from Peyton. Emma is crucial in luring away. Her cleverness there at the end. And Claire herself. But not Michael. Michael falls for the obvious trap that Peyton set, and then just lies there with his broken fucking legs for the last several minutes of the movie, Yeah, it's perfect, because it needed to be her. I think it is crucial that near the end, Claire punches right in the face Peyton, and then fucking does the, I don't know, football tackle, wrestling tackle kind of thing, and gets her launched out the fucking window. It is not anyone other than Claire who does delivers the final blow there. Because they're fighting over whose family this is. So it's very important that it is Claire who is the one who wins, rather than someone else winning on her behalf. Now, I think that does get us into a yeah, I think I appreciated the way that they give Solomon a goofy sense of humor. The other thing about 1, 2, 5, 9. I'm just kidding. I do have a measuring tape, and they're just and they're like, okay. I have worked a little with people who have learning disabilities or the like, and a number of them do have a goofy sense of humor, and they're some of the friendliest, nicest people you'll ever meet. So it really fucking sucks that a lot of people are so uncomfortable around them, or even outright hate them or something. Now, let's see. And I thought it worked really. I love the fact that Emma immediately takes a shining to Solomon, because he's a big teddy bear, he's so friendly. He's so nice, and yeah, she's just happy that, and it's also, I mean, in school she gets bullied, so it's nice to be nice, and the yeah, the way that she kind of, if you're nice to her, she'll like you, but there at the end she does also understand not everybody who's nice to you is good. So that's a very clear, again, notice the way that Emma reacts to meeting Solomon and Peyton. It's, again, this very much like, yeah, uh, fast friends, I think is the term, and yeah. Let's see. I think the very next thing is the yeah. So anyway, yeah, one of the few things that Michael does do is he does say, well, if you're sure, you should accuse him, and yeah, she does, and several other women, she ends up not filing a lawsuit, but several other women did. Once she came forward, there were several other women who did, and that was the thing. Like, even in the 90s, we knew, yeah, if someone, if you have been sexually assaulted or raped, you might not be the first, and if the person isn't stopped by someone, you might not be the last. And violence should only ever be the last resort. I'm not talking about that. But if no one knows that this person is a sexual predator, it's that much more difficult to do anything about, And let's see. I think that does bring us to the, yeah. So yeah, the movie really makes it abundantly clear Dr. Mott, he even, like, if he wasn't guilty, why does he suicide? Like, there's no way he can't afford a good fucking lawyer. If he's not guilty as sin, why wouldn't he just let the trial play out? I mean, there are people who have clearly gotten away with being a sexual predator, like, just because they had a good defense attorney or the like, but yeah. Despite that, there are some people online who don't think that Dr. Mott was a sexual predator, and they think that Claire is overreacting, and they agree with Peyton that Claire murdered Dr. Mott. And that's how fucking unwilling some people are to empathize with women, just a teensy tiny bit. Like, seriously, the movie could not make it clearer. And, like, yeah. I could go on for hours, so I'm just gonna, yeah. It's, that's part of why sometimes movies are this direct and this, like, it's so obvious. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, the movie doesn't spend that much time on the sexual predator element. It is kind of just there to set up the rest of the movie. They needed something big to motivate Peyton, and yeah, I think a strong case could be made that they should have chosen something significantly less sensitive, or been more sensitive about it. Yeah, I mean, if they were more sensitive about it, the movie would be completely different. So they should probably just have gone with something, they should have been like Monty Python, now for something completely different. But the, yeah, one of the glaring factual errors, the name and even face, Claire is revealed on TV. Oh, by the way, here's the woman who first accused him, and someone noted in the MDB Goof's factual errors section, that's illegal. You can't do that. You cannot show. And it's also like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish here? Like, this is not, you cannot do this. This is just completely ridiculous, And yeah, but the yeah, and the miscarriage, also sensitive subject, not handled with a lot of delicate, yeah. And I am gonna recommend you watch. So let's see. It's definitely The Take that made the video. I think it's maybe called The Evolution of the Child-Free Woman in Fiction or something like that. If I recall, it maybe spoils some of the other movies that have the same trope, so just be aware of that. But yeah, they point out how, basically it's this fear, this anxiety around, well, if women become really attached to the the baby, even when it's a fetus, before they give birth, and a lot do. I forget if it's all. I know that it's a little bit more complicated. It's not everyone who has the same universal experience. So if you are having what might appear to be an unusual experience, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It might mean that you need a support system. Maybe you need to talk to someone about it, but it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. You can, yeah, if talk to someone who'll understand and try to get help. There's no shame. There should be no shame in getting help from someone else. But yeah, because of this emotional bond, well, if a woman loses a baby, might that have a really strong negative impact on her? And that, again, like, that's something. I'm afraid I forget their titles, but I've seen at least one movie that does take it as seriously as it should, because it's emotionally devastating for some women to lose the baby. Some from miscarriage, some from abortion, which doesn't mean that abortion shouldn't be safe and legal. It, yeah, don't judge a woman who has an abortion. That's also, I could go on for forever, but just if you need more information, find another leftist who will talk at length about it. There's just so many other things to talk about in this movie. That's moving on. Yeah, and I also think it's she does such a great job. Rebecca De Mornay, she's very intensely emotional when she's losing the baby. And then for a while, she doesn't show it very much, and then it comes out when she's ripping up the proposal, and they're at the very end, but yeah, so we know that it's there. It's under the surface, very, very nicely done. And that is, of course, there is a misogynist trope here of, like, if a woman smiles, is she actually planning something evil, kind of thing, And again, I think it helps that Peyton is the only woman who chooses evil. Like, Marlene could have chosen evil. She could have cheated. Or let's see. Yeah. She could have cheated with Michael. She chooses not to. And of course she's offended when she's accused of it. But, then later she does, like, you could easily have a version of this movie where near the end she's like, so Claire's going to be potentially murdered by Peyton? Well, fuck her. She humiliated me, at the surprise party. But she doesn't. She doesn't even, like, pause for a second. Like, the moment she realizes Claire's in danger, it's like, you know what? Whatever. The past is past. I'm gonna, she is her sister's keeper, So I think that does bring the let's see. Right, and also we don't spend a lot of time on Peyton grieving Dr. Mott. Like, the fact that he was a sexual predator doesn't mean that he wasn't extremely important to her. And it's essentially just there for motivation when you could have had that without something quite so extreme as, that's, yeah. A lot of media does not do grief that well. As someone who has grieved myself, it is, I'm, like I said, I love the movie, but I'm willing to acknowledge it's pretty fucked up to say, oh, someone she loved died, so now she's gonna kill people. That's. And I think, does that pretty much get us to the, Did I already mention? So it's not every child-free woman in the movie because Marlene doesn't have a kid and she's not. Yeah, I think. Fuck. I think I already said that. Okay, moving on. Let's see. I guess that does bring us to yeah. So we have the time skip and Joe was born, and then we have the um yeah, Peyton showing up, and it's very nicely done on the thing about the jacket, Emma's jacket, because like yeah, she's got it in her hand, and she's obviously she's rushing. Is okay, gotta get out of the house quick, get Emma onto the school bus, kind of thing. She was going to give her the jacket, maybe put it on her or something, and then she forgets it, because she's stressed, and then suddenly she's, oh no, fuck, I still have the jacket, she runs after. You're not gonna run fast enough to catch a bus that's driving, obviously. So Peyton, immediately makes herself seem like a saint, yeah. And she, so yeah, Emma gets the jacket and she's like, oh, you're a lifesaver. Do you know where I can find the Bartels? Very nicely done, because we know she knows that's Claire. She wouldn't have stopped the bus for anyone else. She knows because of the hospital, the TV. But she wants Claire to think that she doesn't know. That was also, that's technically exposition when, you have the thing about like, she hasn't touched her food. She's not even talking anymore. The other nurse might not know that Peyton hasn't said a word since it seems like the nurse who, brings in the food afterwards and says, you really have to eat. She's like in charge maybe. And the other one, like maybe has more, maybe she just started her shift or something. I don't know exactly. But yeah, there's clearly something there. So that's a conversation that feels organic, even though it is technically exposition. And it's also like, well, how do you quickly establish it without just coming out and fucking saying it, because like, okay, do we just have like time lapse of her not eating, or not saying anything? It's just, yeah, so just have them say it, because like they're concerned, they're like, this is not a good sign, like she lost the baby and she's not taking it well. We have to make sure she eats, and the scene also establishes, that's how she finds out about Claire. And yeah, what goes around comes around. Jesus. And yeah, so you have the hiring, and we also have the brief, that's technically also exposition. I don't feel safe leaving Joe in the hands of any of the nannies I interviewed. So okay, she has off-screen interviewed them. She wasn't happy with any of them. Technically exposition, but it's also something she would be saying to Michael, because they're trying to figure out what are we gonna do. It's like, because she does want more freedom to, she's a 90s woman. She wants it all. She wants to be able to have a hobby or job. It's something, she doesn't want her life to only be taking care of the kids. She loves them. She wants to spend a lot of time with them, but she does also want a little else. And that again is the thing, that was very much in the 1990s. A lot of women were trying to find a way. I'm not really the right person to determine if it worked or not. I very much believe that women should get a chance to, I think, um, it's okay. Not, I think I have seen studies that show it is very healthy if a woman is able to have something other than being a mother. Even if she loves being a mother, she loves her kids, she loves spending time with them. It's good to also have something else. You have to be careful not to ever end up resenting being a parent, because the kids can sense it, and they're going to be like, there are adults who have said, why didn't my parents just, for example, divorce because they clearly wanted to, and instead I just felt all that pain? Why didn't they do this or that thing that they felt like, well, we're not supposed to, and yeah, don't stay together for the kids. That's simply, it isn't actually better for them because they can sense that the parents can't stand each other and maybe resent that the kid is why they're staying together. And yeah, it's just not. Anyway, moving on. Right, as always, if I try to base all my opinions on studies and such. So if I make a claim, I'm not great at like citing, but citing studies and such. But if I make a claim and you're like, is that really true? Please do look into it yourself. Look at the studies for yourself. I'm not telling anyone what they have to think. I'm expressing what I've come to understand through studies and listening to members of minorities when that's what I'm talking about, stuff like that. Anyway, let's see. I think that does pretty much get us to the I guess, let's see. I think that brings us, what was the next thing? Okay. I'm gonna pick one in a second or two instead of spending forever trying to remember. Yeah, so she decides, right, she, not only, oh, you're hired, would you like to have dinner with us tonight, and like immediately, right, you have the thing about, oh, the earring, it the part of it fell off. Ugh, Michael has been telling me I have to fix this. And then, when they're talking about like, well, I think we should probably hire her, she found because the earring fell out again, and then she pretends that Joe was about to swallow it. I mean, I guess I'll leave you to decide whether or not the person, me, who just saved your newborn's life from your very careless mistake, you can just let me know. And it's such a great, because it's subtly, okay, set up and payoff. She immediately, she sees a weakness and she pounces. This tiny little, what's it called? The weak link in the chain, and just immediately, because like she could have just given it to her and said, you should probably take it off at this point. It's dangerous. But she goes as far as saying, he could have died, Why didn't you take the implication is, why didn't you take the earring off? Which Michael said, and Michael is now hearing, so like, yeah, Michael doesn't make a huge deal out of it at the time, but it does subtly plant, Peyton saves Joe's life when Claire, she just doesn't listen. She doesn't do the thing that we're telling her she should do. She could have gotten him killed. It's such the way that Peyton undermines Claire throughout the movie and manages to keep it secret. Like, it genuinely is such a effective, it's again this thing of, that is something that there are a number of women who fear. Like Marlene spells it out. Never let an attractive woman have a position of power in your home. That's, there you go. It's perfectly put into words there. That is a fear that a number of women have. And when you are having this situation of, suburbia and can you have it all, yeah, it's terrifying to imagine a woman undermining that. Yeah. Let's see. I think that does get us to... Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love about this movie is the way that it really takes women's, fears seriously. There's so many American movies where if a woman is afraid of something, it's going to be made fun of. And, then like a man is going to come in and he's going to have a real problem. Like, if only I could worry as much about my emotions as you women folk do. Well, if you did, maybe you'd be safer to be around. Maybe you'd be happier. Like, men's loneliness epidemic. Well, maybe more needs to be done about our willingness and ability to communicate with other people. Like, why are you blaming women? They've been trying to get us to communicate. Like, so many women just want us men to communicate. They want us to be honest and open. And that's such a big part of what they want from us. And so many misogynistic men just refuse to make the effort because they feel that, oh, it'll make me weak. And then what if I let her in and then she leaves and then I'm weak? You'd be human. You wouldn't be a fucking robot. Like, there are, like, percentage-wise, such a huge percentage of women want the open communication. And yeah, you know what? Sometimes relationships end, and that can hurt. You know, I'm not gonna pretend like it doesn't hurt. I don't know any leftist who does. But you're not stronger for not letting her in. You're just bolting the door to a potential positive relationship shut. And that hurts more. I used to be much more closed off, and there were people that you know what, this is getting to, I've made my point. You know, moving on. Let's see. I think that does bring us to, but yeah, because, you know, throughout the movie, it is these little, you know, there are fairly few overt acts of violence, especially towards the Bartels. Like, she does hit Solomon, um, including with the fucking poker. You know, she tries to hit, yeah, she does hit Michael. I forget if that's the poker, but something heavy enough to. Oh, right, that's the shovel, which was also set up. You know, you don't think about that when, you know, oh, you're really good at shoveling. Thank you. So we notice the shovel, you know, because it's like, what a sweet moment between the two of them, you know. And then later when she has the shovel, nobody's like, they had a shovel? It's like, oh, you know, because like the Martins, yeah, I think they called them the Martins. You know, you know, this family of birds that comes every year. That's so sweet. And then she's using it as a weapon. You know, it can be a tool to build or a weapon to destroy, and Peyton chooses the latter. You know, and it is this thing, like, it is obviously very dicey to say that, oh, you know, this woman, she just destroys. She doesn't love. She doesn't, you know, care, or her care is, you know, dark in some way because she's taking someone else's family, kind of thing, you know. But yeah, you know, it is like, over the course of this movie, there's not very many deaths. Like, there's Mott, Marlene, and Peyton. You know, and the movie ends almost immediately after Peyton is dead, and her death signals that, yeah, it's over. You know, but that's all. You know, and yet we feel a strong sense of either actual or potential loss. And yeah, you know, it's not about like, oh, like we don't spend that much time thinking she's gonna like fucking kill. Like, she would have killed Claire there at the end if Claire hadn't faked the asthma attack, you know. But other than that, she's not really, and it looks like she's gonna smother Joey, which is also, you know, not handled as sensitively. They didn't need to make it seem like she was going to smother him at all, you know, lingering on her, slowly walking over there with the pillow in her hand. Like, you didn't have to have that. Let's see, I think, yeah, you know, and it's little things, you know, it's the jewelry, it's the perfume. You know, she says, you know, oh, your jewelry almost killed your kid. She wears the perfume. She ruins the dress. She borrows the bracelet. You said I could. You know, these little things that, yeah. And, yeah. the fact that she breastfeeds Joey, and thus, Claire isn't able to. That's the kind of thing. Like, there's a lot of men, and I'll admit, before watching this movie, I was one of them. Like, we wouldn't have even thought of, like, if it wasn't in a movie like this, we wouldn't even think about, like, is that something you're worried about? Like, okay, to be clear, I can imagine fathers would think. I am not a father. I almost definitely never will be, and never have been. But yeah, it's the kind of thing, because and okay, to be clear, I did already appreciate, yeah, it is part of the bond, but the fact that someone would think of, keeping a woman from breastfeeding her own baby, I wouldn't even have thought of something like that. But I feel like the fact that it's in this movie means there's at least some women who do, like, that is an actual anxiety. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Yeah. Everybody's anxious about something, and not everything we're anxious about is necessarily rational, but it is something we care about. And sometimes seeing it in a movie can be, one of my favorite movies of all time is 1982's The Thing. I'm not thinking that something like that is ever gonna, the events of that movie are ever gonna happen in the real world, but it is something, it pokes at an anxiety. I don't know if I want to go into exactly what that anxiety is, but that's, there are a couple of anxieties in that movie that are poked at, and those are some of the ones that I personally find the most horrifying, so I'm perfectly willing to admit those are not, they're never gonna fucking happen, Anyway, moving on. I think that does get us to the yeah, when Claire explains, I'm worried about Joey. He's not, there's no breastfeeding, and and Michael's just like, well, we talk about, did you ask a doctor or something? And well, yeah, I said as long as he's gaining weight. Okay then. I want to pin a medal on his chest. I don't mean his shirt. I mean his actual chest that says useless. Just like wonderfully. And I kind of love that the movie doesn't even come out and say she should probably find a guy who's better at. No, it's just kind of like, you know what, men. It's just like, I'm willing to admit we're not always the best at helping women, including women we really deeply care about. So I hear the call out, and I'm willing to admit there's some truth to it. I think that does pretty much get us to... Is that where they get... Oh, right. So we meet Marlene and Marty. I appreciate Marty is barely in this fucking thing. Like, he's there so that Marlene is with someone, which does help with the thing about, like, hypothetically, if Marlene was single, would they really go out just the three of them? No. It's a double date. She's there with her husband. Claire's there with Michael. What's the big deal? It's the kind of thing where, like, if Claire said, Michael, I don't think I want you to be around Marlene. You used to date, like, he'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm with you. She's with him. Where's the problem? And of course, sometimes people cheat. It doesn't, the fact that there's, that they're supposedly monogamous, that doesn't always last forever, so again, that is an anxiety that there is about, and especially they point out, oh, the first love, Michael's first love was Marlene. You never forget your first love. Even before Peyton says it, that is already something that we're thinking, like, is this gonna be a thing? Because like that is, I don't know if it's true for everyone. I think for a number of people it is. It is also one of those things, it's for some people would definitely say, no, I forgot the first person, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not inherently better or worse to, like, obviously it's great if you are actually in a position where you can spend the rest of your life with the very first person you fell in love with and you have a healthy, happy relationship. That's wonderful. But, for a lot of people, that's just not going to be realistic, and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, I think that does get us all the way to, yeah, so yeah, poison. Come again? You're wearing her perfume, such a great, like, because she's not calling her poison, but it seems like it. And Peyton's like, shit, do I need to practice my, I'm not a killer face in the mirror more? Did she already see through me? And she kind of did, like, and Marlene, it's great how she is just a no bullshit character. Like, you have a make something up. You have a Harvard education, just like she does not take any shit. Just when she is confident about something, she's going to pursue it. And yeah, I love that it is completely clear she is not cheating with Michael. That is just not a thing that's happening, Let's see that, because that again is like, it is important to underline if you're going to bring up, well, what if there's cheating? It's important to underline not everybody cheats. Some people do like they're friends now. There are people who used to be in love with someone and now they're friends, and that can work. And obviously it's the kind of thing where if you are in a monogamous relationship with someone else, if they really feel uncomfortable about you still being friends with your ex, that's not something that is necessarily unreasonable. It depends on circumstance, but there are people where it's like, no, you should cut off contact with your ex if you're in a new relationship, I think that does, but yeah, and they, so they're all sitting there at the table, and, Michael grabs a smoke, and we see the very distinctive lighter, and yeah, Claire points out, you only ever smoke when you're with her. And he says, one cigarette is not going to kill me. And that technically is, yeah, that is technically exposition. Or her line, not his. But that is the kind of thing that people say, and it's, yeah, like she's not making a huge deal of it right then. It becomes a bigger deal later because she thinks it's proof of cheating, but it does bother her. And that is the kind of thing, sometimes in a relationship, if you see your partner do something that bothers you, you might say, do you really need to do that? Kind of thing. So yeah. And I think that does, yeah. And you have the thing about, was it Marty or Michael? One of them asks, hey, how much did the Fletcher estate go for? And she says 3 and change or something like that, And that again, like when you first hear that, you might not necessarily think anything of it, but like you just, you pick up on it. It's not white noise. The dialogue in this movie never becomes white noise. And yeah, later is, oh, I have to show the Fletcher estate. I am a good liar. I am very convincing, right? And Claire's like, the fuck are you talking about? You sold it. You told me, It's just, yeah, very nicely done. And again, it doesn't feel like they're just saying it so that it's set up, because they're talking work, they're talking shop. That's a thing adults do when they're out together, And yeah, I thought it was great the way that, you have the brief exchange about, today a woman can feel like a failure if she doesn't have time. Well, let's see, if she doesn't pull in 50K a year and have time for blowjobs and homemade lasagna. And I think it's Marty who says, well, Marlene has that down or something like that. So, it's like they're casually talking about their sex lives, which again, 90s, adults, yeah, sometimes would do that. That was like, that's part of what Sex and the City was built on, were these frank discussions about sex. Okay, at this point, I feel like I should probably recommend. So the Take have done some really solid videos on Sex and the City. Ole Pop, Olurinati Pop. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the channel name, but yeah, Ole. God damn it, I do not remember her full name. I'm so sorry. I'm a big fan, but right now I'm struggling to remember her name. And again, my wrists are really, really sore, so I'm not looking up. But yeah, Olurinati. Her channel about pop culture. She made a video about Trey, and wasn't Miranda. God damn it. What was it? Charlotte? I think it was Charlotte with Trey. Really solid video. And she mentioned she's going to make more videos about, let's see, I think she's going to make one about Harry and Charlotte. Really looking forward to it. Not gonna lie, I was invested in their relationship when I watched it. I like Trey fine as well. But yeah, really solid videos. Moving on. Yeah, so it feels like, yeah, this is just the kind of thing that they would talk about. This also, it establishes their relationship, like, yeah, when she's just with the kids, she's a good mom, but when she's around her adult friends, they do talk about, like, sex and home, making, like, yeah, homemade lasagna, Jesus. Doesn't that take fucking ages to make from the, yeah, anyway, moving on. Because there's, like, layers there she got to deal with. Anyway, but yeah, that also, you have the thing about how, yeah, it's, Marty saying, well, Marlene is, and I are sexually active, which, again, like, it feels organic. That's the kind of relationship they have. There's not really anything inherently wrong with that, as long as everyone at the table is comfortable with the conversation. And it seems like they basically are. But I think Marlene gives a little look, but she's not like, fuck you. And yeah, it just brings up to the forefront, Marlene is sexual, and she used to be with Michael. So it's, yeah. On some level, Claire is worried that they're going to cheat, but she trusts him, and ultimately he does deserve that trust. Not all men do, sadly, but Michael is true to her. He has chances. He could have tried to sleep with Marlene when they were planning the birthday party. He could have slept with Peyton, then, after the rain. Let's see. I think, yeah, it is interesting that there's so much sexual energy, but no actual sex in the movie, and that is, again, like, ultimately, yeah, part of it is that there are characters who want sex, but they end up not having, technically off screen, like, at least twice, Claire and Michael did have sex. But and yeah, it's, they do still, like, you can tell from the way they're talking to each other. Yeah, they do sometimes have sex. But I think, I think that does bring us to the, yeah, and it is also so fucking cool when she says, the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. And they made sure to put that line in that TV ad for the movie that I mentioned. And yeah, the moment that I saw that, I was like, fuck, I gotta see this. That's such a, yeah. And it's wonderful because, like, obviously that's not what that originally means, but yeah, for the baby, it feels like, oh, they rule the world. It's, what's the line in The Crow? mother is the name of God on the lips of all small children, or something like that, so yeah. Which obviously that particular way to phrase it wouldn't exactly work for this movie. But yeah, and while they're gone, Peyton shows Emma scary movies, which again, it's such a wonderful, because like at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Like, it doesn't seem to upset Emma. She's never complains of nightmares from it or something. But it is the kind of thing that a lot of mothers really don't want their young children, and I don't necessarily think this is even a gender thing, but just she's young for, it's a fucking zombie movie apparently. Looks cool. I don't think I'm familiar with that particular one. I have made it a bit of a mission to watch pretty much every fucking zombie movie that I've watched several dozen. Anyway, but yeah, and she's sitting there like, oh, that's so cool. And then they talk about keeping secrets. And this is, again, such great setup and payoff, because like for a while it seems like she can't really hide that she's hiding something. She can just hide the detail, So yeah, she also, when Peyton says, I mean, you would know, Claire, if Emma was keeping a secret. And it is true. Like, it is true of a lot of children. They can't necessarily keep a secret all that well, but they'll try, and they'll maybe be able to hide what secret they are keeping. But a lot of, they'll have tells. So yeah, she doesn't think, she can tell, oh, she's definitely keeping something from me, but she thinks that it's the sexual assault, the rape, rather than the um yeah, she has no idea it's the horror movie. But yeah, and they have a secret sign, the crossed fingers, not telling the truth, the symbol of not telling the truth. And then then she's like, do you have a secret? Is there anything you could tell me that I could use to gain further influence over you and thus the family? And yeah, I don't know if I have more to say about the bully scene. It's just so fucking good. I kind of love that the bully is bullying someone else, right? Or I guess maybe not bullying, but like in conflict with someone else, like, and then she comes over and is like, yeah, okay, like an adult male might have more developed muscle mass than an adult woman, but an adult woman is gonna have more muscle than a child, even a boy child, so just, and the way that everybody has to go, some people like peeking over the head over, just, they have to see. And Peyton doesn't like take care to like drag him to somewhere where no one else can see him. She does want an audience for this, as long as Claire doesn't find out, and I mean, okay, is Roth gonna tell someone, oh, hey, the nanny beat me up? Like, no, that's not a thing that's gonna happen. Not sure the other kids are really gonna tell either. They're probably gonna keep teasing him about it, but it's not gonna become a thing, and ultimately also, and this is again where I think they make the right choice. Like, it's intense enough that it like has an impact, but it's also not like she didn't like break his arm or something. If that happened, there'd be consequences. Some authority figure would be like, who did this? You know, possibly to send a thank you card, but they would definitely want to know who did it. And I think that does. I guess I'll just briefly note. Yeah, if you know a child who is apparently not receiving the support they need from authority figures in their life, you might not be able to do anything directly, but maybe you can make sure they get in touch with someone who can help. But it's a huge problem, and some people carry the weight of the trauma of that experience the rest of their lives. So you can really be a hero in helping to prevent that. Yeah, I think that does get us to the it is kind of ridiculous that like after this, Madeline Zima, like I already mentioned, I primarily, other than this. Well, let's see. No, yes, I had watched that by then. By the time I watched this, I had already watched some of The Nanny. I find it frustrating that the show is simply titled The Nanny because it makes it much more difficult to, you have to specify The Nanny, the Fran Drescher show. Don't know why they didn't just give it a more distinct, like, it's good for a sitcom to have a distinct title, Married with Children, Two and a Half Men, you know, um, wasn't one of them called The King of Queens? Like, these are titles you remember, according to Jim, I'm not saying all these are good shows. The last two I mentioned definitely aren't, but, okay. I didn't watch enough of The King of Queens to know for sure. But I'm not very fond of, it's a little bit the Adam Sandler connection. Not the biggest fan of the group that he works with and the movies they make. I have definitely watched enough Adam Sandler comedies to say I am not a fan. I might at some point watch his dramas. Like, I've heard of such fucking amazing things about Uncut Gems. Like, that sounds fucking amazing. I wish that I could say that I love Adam Sandler because it sounds like he's an amazing dramatic actor. I have no reason to doubt that. And to be fair, some of the comedies, like some of his earliest stuff, there's some decent stuff there. Yeah. Moving on. The yeah, the fact that she ended up playing, she was a regular on that show, wasn't she? If I recall correctly. It's been years since I watched The Nanny, but yeah, Gracie Sheffield, and she was genuinely really really funny on that. That's kids on sitcoms, very hit and miss, and I feel really bad for the kids because like they're too young to really, it's not even really healthy. But she really did well. That was a very strong cast in general. Like I'm not sure I would say there was even one weak link on that show of the main cast. Some of the guests, it's a little bit more. Some of them weren't any good at acting or being funny, for that matter. Anyway, I think that does pretty well get us to the let's see. I think I've pretty much said everything about the. No, right, yeah. So when she frames Solomon, they are folding laundry, and not very long after, she says, "Oh, hey, do you think Solomon has a? I'm just worried about your baby because you keep dropping sharp objects into his mouth, and I can't hear him right now. Can you find a battery?" It's not like Claire's going to be like, "You can find a battery yourself." Can you imagine? Like, that would be, oh my God. I would love for there to be an outtake where she just fucks up Peyton's plan there and just goes, "Hey, it's just, hey, you can find yours." I sure can. Fuck. But no, it's just, do you think Solomon... Could you go look in the place where I definitely didn't just leave something super incriminating to frame the innocent guy who's like a fucking saint? But I do really appreciate she doesn't find it in me. It's not like she opens one drawer, so there it is. Like, she opens like three before she finds it, so and it's like tucked away a little bit, but it's, if Claire is looking everywhere for batteries, and why wouldn't she be, and it's like, I almost wish there was like a deleted scene where she notes, oh fuck, there actually are batteries in here. Peyton does. I guess I better hide them so that Claire doesn't find them and then fuck it up. That is one thing I think really works here. So I guess I should start by saying I do think sometimes it works extremely well in movies when the villain has a perfect plan that goes off without a hitch. I don't think it would have worked well here, and I'm glad they didn't try for it. Because, like, yeah, every so often, a plan goes awry. The uh, um, the greenhouse, that was meant to, it was for Claire, not Marlene. And, she doesn't manage to, like, no one was supposed to find her in time, but the I actually have no idea why exactly. Oh, did she get the address out? Maybe. I know she called 911 and, like, started to say something. I'm not entirely sure if she did get the address out. I guess certainly, like, obviously, if someone calls 911 and says an address and then nothing, I can imagine they might send a car to see, like, what the fuck happened. Especially in a nice neighborhood like that. Maybe not. Yeah, if they don't think the people living in the neighborhood are worth saving, they might not. But anyway, yeah, makes sense. And let's see. Yeah, those are the various ones where she had to improvise. But yeah, it makes it more compelling. Every time that we see her plans thwarted, it's like, what's she gonna do now? And never disappoints. Yeah, then we have the part where, yeah, so she rips off the proposal. She takes it from the thing. We also have the part where she grabs the lighter. I love that we don't see her take it. We just see her look directly at it, and there's enough time, and Marlene and Claire are both preoccupied with Joey. So she has time to take it, and then later puts it in the jacket that she, right before Claire is about to go to the cleaners with it. And yeah, of course, he's going to take it out because it's like, there shouldn't be anything in here, that's going to fuck up the process of cleaning the clothes, And he doesn't think that he's saying, your husband is cheating on you. He just thinks he's saying, smoking's a bad habit. Like, talk to him about that, But yeah. But yeah, you have the thing about, he's like, I have to leave right now, otherwise I can't, I have to deal with the proposal. And she's like, oh, I can deal with the proposal. I can send it in. And he still has to leave everyone. No, seriously though, he would have had less time other times. He can spend that extra time at the lab. You sure about this? We stayed up all night. You typed it up. And yeah, she rips it up, and someone else has already noted. Yeah, her, like, slamming she hits the plunger against the walls. Like, someone would hear that. That's a little bit okay. But the melodrama works. Like, it's we're sitting there thinking, oh fuck, she really wishes one of those walls was Claire's fucking face, doesn't she? And yeah, the let's see. I think that does get us to the point where, it is fun to watch this movie today and think about how they would need a complete rewrite, and maybe that's, that could be interesting to see. It's possible I'll do the sequel. Sorry, remake? The 2025 version. Because you would have to completely rewrite this movie if, like, based on, like, technology, because, like, there's all this stuff about, like, okay, you have the number for the restaurant. I called the lab and there was no answer. Called oh, you are really here. Well, someone called for you and they left a message, as like, well, today we have cell phones. I guess they'd constantly have to write those out. Otherwise, yeah. And the thing about, like, oh, we typed up the proposal, today you have another copy on the computer though, right? Like, but no, like, they mean typed, like, on a fucking, what's it called? Wait, shit. I guess it doesn't matter if because they have to, yeah, but they'll probably email it today. No, yeah. 1992, I'm not sure they would have had, because they would need, like, a printer. It might be easier to just have, like, a regular oh my god, I don't even remember what they're called. Typing machine, maybe? Yeah, you know what I mean. It might be easier to just have that, as long as you can type, and I'm not sure computers did that much to help you back then. Fuck, 1992. God damn, what was that before Windows even? Because Windows 95 was one of the earliest. Come to think of it, yeah, it might have been. Yeah, anyway, it would obviously have been completely different. We have to go to the FedEx thing to send. No, just fucking email it. What the fuck are you talking about? Just, yeah. The I'm not gonna make the joke about like, kids today, like, yeah. Oh, and as that dang dad put it, let's stop saying okay boomer and start saying okay capitalist instead. Anyway, but that's very much one of those jokes, that they would make about like kids and technology. Anyway, yeah, really effective when, we see her go to the place and she, I thought it was here, it's not here, and she puts it back and goes back in the car, and I don't know where it went. What happened? And the fact that he doesn't say it's okay, he doesn't say I forgive you. He just says we talked about this. I know you're sorry. He doesn't. So that's very, very nice because he is upset. He does. He trusted her with this. He was going to mail it himself, and she said she was going to do it, and now they're going to have to wait until the next quarter. So yeah. I adore the line, "Daddy's a mad scientist." And the whole thing with the birthday, the surprise party, so wonderfully done. She shows up at work, and the guy's like, "Where do you hire a nanny?" Just like, and everyone's fucking staring at them like, just like a tongue out, like hubba hubba, just like. But but yeah, again, like underlining, she is conventionally attractive. She is available. She clearly, like, there's some warmth there towards him from her, and I do really appreciate that. The fact that by the end he is still true. Like, he has every chance to cheat. And he doesn't. He doesn't even seem to really consider it. He seems almost shocked. He doesn't feel the need to specify which one woman is enough for him, he assumes that she knew that he was talking about Claire. And yeah, there are men who are that devoted. And the fact that the movie, let's see, I think, I love the thing about, a man never gets over his first love. Oh, I wasn't his first love. You'll never guess who it was. Marlene? What makes you say that? This is wonderfully, because she already knew. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't picking up on something between them that Claire now feels like, wait, should I be picking that up? Are they laying it down? And, no. Let's see. I think it was, wasn't it Emma? I think it was Emma who said it, so, and Claire wasn't there. And she hasn't been watching the movie. She's very inattentive. So she had no idea. But the, she goes, Peyton goes to the lab and says, what about, surprise birthday party? And then later it's like, maybe we shouldn't. I think it would be good. It's such a great, like, and yeah, she goes and she finds the lighter, and then she comes home and she's deeply upset. And then Emma comes in, Mommy, there's someone in the other room. Maybe you should come take a look at this, and yeah, she fucking forgot it was her birthday, understandably, but that's how, upset she is by this. She doesn't even, like, she doesn't even bring up that it's her birthday. She, like, yeah. And yeah, Michael comes in there. So could you maybe come into the other room with me? And, she accuses him, and he genuinely doesn't even know at first what it is. And, he recognizes the lighter, and, yeah, like, he thinks, well, he can't just come out and say, we were planning the party, because he wants her to still come in, and then she accuses, and says it loud enough that they hear it in the other room. And I love the fact that it lingers. It doesn't, we don't immediately see their reaction. There's a few seconds, and then she walks in and sees. And I love that several of them, they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, it's almost cringe comedy, and like, surprise, surprise. And Marlene understandably, walks off, and it looked like a good fucking party. Like, they didn't they have like at least one person with a fucking instrument there? Like, that's fucking cool. They were, obviously they were getting ready to like play some instruments and sing happy birthday, but yeah, they're standing there holding the fucking delicious looking dessert. And I just wanted there to be an outtake where one of them goes, now that the party's already ruined, can we put this down? Because this cake is really hard on my wrists. But yeah, the way that Peyton drives a wedge between Claire and the rest of the family, so wonderfully done. Like, that's such a painful moment. A ruined birthday party, and she thinks he's cheating. She accuses her best friend of cheating as well. Or fuck, I don't know if they're best friends, but friend, a friend of the family. They go out to dinner every so often, kind of thing, And the let's see. I think that does. Right, and there's also, okay, so I know I already mentioned the poison line, the fact that because she made sure she stained the dress with the perfume, and then she walks down right after, and she's the one who's got perfume oil all over her hands because of that, so that's why it's being smelled. She didn't actually put Claire's perfume on herself, but that's why she smells of it. So very nice. And yeah, it refers to she is poisoning the relationship, but it's just, yeah. I do not know enough about perfumes to know if one of them is named Poison, but I wouldn't rule it out. Sounds more like a comic book character, but yeah, I'm just saying, if someone told me you're gonna love this movie, it has poison in it, and it was a perfume, I'd probably be a little disappointed, unless it was this movie. But I think that does bring us to, yeah. So, after a while they do talk about like, wait, oh right, fuck, I gotta, so yeah, Solomon, so, she threatens him after he sees her. Also really nicely done with, he's climbing, he's just gonna paint, and he sees her. It's like so shocked, he's like falling down, and she confronts him, and then not long after, Michael's like, Solomon, would you follow me? And like we and Solomon are like, oh no, Peyton, the fuck did you tell them? And he walks a few steps. And he's like, oh no, well, I'm gonna miss these people, but I guess this is the last time I'm gonna see them. And then the garage door opens, like, we got you the bike you wanted. God damn it. I fucking love this melodrama. It's so wonderfully ridiculous. Just like, and that was, Emma, ask Mr. Solomon if he's thirsty. My mom asks if you want anything. I want a new bike. And he's very specific too. Like, he knows exactly, like, he picked out the make and model, everything. And they give him that bike. And I think that is the one he's cycling later on in. I don't think it was the one he was cycling. Or yeah, it must have been the new one. I'm pretty sure. But yeah. And yeah, the fact that he's like following, he's watching over the family. And yeah, so we have so Claire notes, a lot of weird things have happened since Peyton arrived. Finally they realize, wait, hasn't it been the amount of time since she first popped up? That's when these problems started happening. It is one of those things. Like, I'm willing to acknowledge, like, I think it works for the movie overall, but it is a little silly that like they go from having perfect lives to like everything just like circling the drain, and it takes them this long to even realize, oh hey, we met a new person that we barely know, and suddenly everything started going wrong. But the yeah, so we have the I guess that brings us to the part where the yeah, so yes, Marlene realizes, she's sitting there looking at houses, and this is the part where, in the review I said, why didn't that happen earlier? As it's been on the market for a while, and the guy says, oh, they're really motivated to sell. Why did it only cross her desk this long after? Like, hasn't it been for sale for like half a year? Didn't they say? I think by then it's been like half a year since Mott died. At no point did it cross her desk. No, that's a little. I'm willing to acknowledge. That's it's contrived because they wanted it to happen late in the movie, and yeah, I think that does bring us to so yeah, she notices the wind chimes. What is that horrible noise? And yeah, so she that's another thing. If the movie was made today, she'd just get on the internet on her computer and look up but no, she has to go to the library to look at microfilm. Oh god, I'm not old enough to remember those, okay? I just want that on the record. I have never in my life looked up microfilm on this. I'm old enough to remember a time before the internet, but I did not do. I guess I just didn't do fucking research back then. But to be, I mean, I was like a teenager when the internet first came. Oh wait, I guess almost teenager. So I wasn't looking up stuff back then, but it does. I like seeing movies where they're going to the library and looking up this old stuff and cycling through. It looks fun. I wouldn't hate trying to use the machine to cycle through the pages and zoom and enhance and shit. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, and then she calls. So she calls the what's it called? The place with the what's it called? The greenhouse place, and we see that guy with Claire a couple of times, and each time she's just like, oh hi, and he's like, oh, I didn't know you were here, I'm so sorry. Marlene called for you. She left a message. She said to call back. It was urgent. And that's again, why didn't she call the cell phone? That's what she would do today, obviously. But yeah, and the way that the driving, I had actually forgotten how intense the driving was. Like, she does almost cause a fucking car accident. And yeah, she goes to the to the Bartell residence. And yeah, she calls. May I ask who this is? It's Marlene. It's I'll tell her. Yeah, sure you will. And she shows up. Is like, where is Claire? Tell me. What's wrong? I need a doctor. Do you know one, Mrs. Mott? I love how dramatic that is. Just like, yeah. And she pleads with her, and when she realizes Marlene's not gonna listen, she says the line that always gets a chill down my spine. Claire's in the greenhouse. But please don't go out there. I mean, she says, no, please come back, stop. That's such a clever, because Marlene is too determined. That's essentially her downfall. She doesn't stop and think, wait, are you fucking with me? But when she has her mindset on something, she just goes for it, so just, yeah. And yeah, yeah, she goes out there, the booby trap is triggered, and right before the glass breaks and shatters and it comes down on Marlene, Peyton finds the time to say, Merry Christmas, you filthy animals? That's interesting. It just was a decade for movies with elaborate booby traps that, yeah. And I thought they did a really great job on, it's not so graphic, but there's so much blood that it's like, okay, she's definitely dead. And I love that we don't see it right away. Peyton walks out there, opens and looks, and then, and Claire comes back, and oh God, the brief bit of Peyton just, just coldly emptying out the things and the refill and the, just and putting it there. And then Claire arrives and, goes into the greenhouse because she brought stuff back for the greenhouse and sees it. And only then do we see, and we just see it fairly briefly. It's enough that it's completely clear what we saw, but it's not so lingering. It's not like gross. And same thing for Peyton at the end when she's impaled. Or I guess I can't say she's impaled technically, but it feels like that's essentially what happened. She dies on she is killed by the white picket fence. And again, there's enough blood there that, but it's not like, there's a lot of movies where I'd be like, okay, we should see like, glass sticking out her fucking face, and we should see like impaled torso of Peyton there at the end. And it's like, it works for a lot of movies. For here, it would just feel like too much, and it's not really a hard R. It's not trying to be like really over the, it's mostly psychological. But yeah, and she needs the inhaler, and so she goes in and she like rips one of the drawers out. At one point she like opens the outer door so hard that it breaks glass. Have you had enough of that recently? And then she's like, the only dependable of the inhalers is out there, man. And she moves and she can't quite make it, and she falls, and we see her pale face just like so fucking oh my god, just ugh. I guess this is a pretty decent time to note. I know I'm not the first person to say it. It's IMDb goofs also notice it. Honestly, I'm not sure if I would have realized if not for that. But once you know it, you can't unsee it. They dubbed over whenever she has the asthma attacks. So the breathing does not match her actual movement, and it's the kind of thing where, like, I'm sorry, it sometimes really distracts and detracts, and ultimately, like, I wish it's probably. So I obviously admire Curtis Hanson a lot. I think it might have been that he should have been like, okay, the breathing needs to be more intense, to tell the actress that as they're filming it, I get why they dubbed it over, because like without that dubbing, it wouldn't be quite enough. But because it's so what's it called? Visual audio mismatch, that really takes some away from it. I think that does bring us to so yeah, she's in hospital, and she comes back, and Peyton's got the bracelet on. You said she can borrow it, and there's the the decoration inside the Joey's room. Someone could have asked me, well, I can have her take it out. No, it's okay. Just like, this thing of like trying not to be unreasonable, but at the same time being like, am I part of this still, or what's going on here? And so she goes to talk to the person working with Marlene, and he tries to help as much as his Harvard education will allow. I guess this is a perfectly decent time to briefly note. So speaking of college, Kat Black did a video or two on the terrible fucking essay. Dead Domain and Edgier Than Thou had already done really solid videos on it. Recommend all three. It's like, it's just we can't let them ruin there's so much fucked up about that. I feel the three I've mentioned covered the how important it is that we not let trans people be fired just because they like. This teacher did her fucking job. Like, what do you want from her? It was good feedback. Like, she was remarkably calm and collected, considering she had just been called demonic in this fucking essay. So, that's been covered really well by the three of them. I just briefly want to note, we really have to make sure that standards are not allowed to drop, that you can't just fucking write, well, the Bible says this, and like ace an exam because they're worried about the fallout if they don't give, that's like, I'm sorry, but so I guess I should briefly note, I don't have a full college education. I took some, it's difficult to explain, but there's a thing here in Denmark where it's not quite college, but it's above high school. I took some of that. The creative, or not creative writing, the writing of essays where you really reflect on something interesting you've read, like that's such a compelling part of it. Like I learned so much from reading them, from writing the essays in response, from getting feedback. Like I didn't ace every single one of those, but I got so much great feedback. It really helped me improve my critical thinking, my argumentation. These videos would be much lesser if not for me having, had that experience. And like, yeah, it's, we really have to stand in opposition to, we cannot let them ruin higher education just because they want fucking robots, worker drones that don't question things. Like, just, yeah, moving on. But yeah, so Claire, goes, she sees the and I like that she doesn't look at the exact same thing. She looked at the Marlene looked at the wind chimes. Claire notices Dr. Victor Mott. Why do I know that name? And yeah, she goes to it, and the she goes in there. There's a nursery, and it looks exactly the same, and the breast pump, and that's also where I would definitely say, okay, the spoon feeding, like we could probably have deduced, basically what's going on with that thing. That doesn't really need to, yeah. What did happen to Mrs. Harris? Like apparently she was so late that the guy was about to leave. Was she in a car crash that was caused by Marlene's reckless driving, maybe? And the let's see, yeah, so yeah, she goes home, and at first she's gonna talk to Michael, and then she sees Peyton, and it's again this wonderful little thing of Peyton's made herself at home. She's setting the table, she's being helpful, she's being a member of the family. But because Claire now knows the truth about her, she wants her out. And the fact that she does get to punch her in the fucking face, so she goes flying over a goddamn table, like, Jesus Christ, that's so fucking awesome. I love it. Just like, again, in real life, not in favor of it, not at all, but in a movie where it's like cathartic, oh my god, it was so good. And that does bring us to the climax. So yeah, let's see, we have so they talk about, okay, well, let's go to a hotel for a few days. We can't trust Peyton to not come back. And she did indeed. Yeah. And we have the thing about the yeah, let's see. So there's the alarm which goes off twice somehow. All right. I don't remember 90s alarms doing that, but I guess, anyway, moving on. It was fun. It worked. But yeah, and he's trying to get back up the stairs, and it's such a great, because like we see a slightly, the door is ajar. Not jar as in the thing that holds certain liquids, but so yeah, we think, oh, she's down there, she got in, and then she's actually up the stairs. Wonderfully done. And yeah, she breaks his legs because he owes her money, And yeah, Claire, you know, claro, no, pero sí. Seriously, if you're not watching Quariters, that is something you're gonna have to rectify. But yeah, Claire tells Emma, as soon as I'm out, lock this door. Don't open it for anyone. And Emma says yes, and then she goes, and right, and Peyton also smashes the light bulb, and Claire's stepping on it, and then the hand comes up, and it's Michael. It's such a wonderful, like, oh my god, it's so ridiculous. And yeah, it's noteworthy here at the end when Peyton has, when the mask slips off completely, she becomes very physically aggressive and violent. We saw that a little earlier when, the plunger and such. But yeah, and that is, of course, they're playing into this thing of, like, stereotypically speaking, supposedly women aren't violent. And I do appreciate that Claire does get to use violence twice against Peyton, and I am afraid I always forget if it's called female rage or feminine rage. Anya Taylor-Joy has talked about it in an interview about, like, so to quote her directly, she says, "No, we get mad," and yeah, she pointed out it's inauthentic if she was being called upon to play a scene where she was reacting to something pretty intense, and she straight up told, I forget if it was the director or writer or someone, this is not going to be authentic unless I get to be physically violent here, and yeah, quite appreciate that it is the case here. There are quite a few women who would be willing to knock Peyton out the window in this particular thing, even knowing there's some chance she's going to die from that, so and she doesn't even seem to feel bad after. It's not like, oh, what have I done? It's more like, well, that solves that. Next time I'll check her references. But the yeah, so that's quite good. And, like, yeah, again, not in favor of violence in real life, but if someone deserves it, if there was such a thing as deserving violence, if I thought that were the case, then I would definitely think that Peyton deserved it, especially from Claire. Now, I think the right, it's also noteworthy the fact that there is a little bit of jealousy between, like, Peyton and Claire both, view Marlene with, like, potential jealousy, maybe because the actress's career is going to be so much bigger, and and to be clear, I do definitely I don't think I've seen I'm deciding that I'm probably going to butcher her name, so I'm not going to say it, but the actress who plays Claire, I don't think I've seen her in even one other thing, but for sure, yeah, oh my god, am I seriously not? Okay, I swear I won't take too many seconds to see if I can actually remember. Jesus Christ. Okay, no, that's not her name. Yeah, it's just not coming to me. Nope. Completely gone. But yeah, she is a better actor. The actress playing Marlene is a better actress, in my experience, than Rebecca De Mornay. Yeah, tremendously talented. Every single thing I've seen her in, she was spectacular. It's very fun seeing such early work. Like, she would never take a role this. Yeah, like, if she were in a movie like this today, or not today, but just few years later from this movie, she would probably have been one of the other two, and she could have played either. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. So Emma opens the door. No, Emma. And, let's see. Shit, what was the next? Right. So the yeah, there's the bit with the yeah. So she looks, and it was good that she didn't do exactly what mommy said, because sometimes, yeah, um, mommy, watch out, and she avoids being hit, at least at first, but she does get hit in the back not long after, and the let's see, um, is that when the huh? Yeah, then yeah. So Peyton goes up, and talks to Emma, and he was like, "We can be a family. You'll never have to see those people again." She's completely dehumanized the Bartels. She just wants the kids now. It's clear that she's not going to get Michael. So, yeah. Let's see. And I love that when when Peyton says, "But you said there was only one woman for you," that's Claire doesn't turn around and say, "You said that to her?" No, she knows who Michael meant. It's very clear it's only Peyton who thought that this would, and yeah, they do such a good job, because like throughout the movie, I wasn't entirely sure, the first time I watched, obviously, if Michael would end up, sleeping with her. It's such a great, the fact that there isn't actually a sex scene in the movie, when there is so much sex in like the in the little looks and their past and some of what they say and stuff like that. But yeah, that, and whether or not Emma would trust, which of them she would trust more. But yeah, so yeah, I already mentioned "You're not my mommy," but that was so fucking good. She locks her in, wonderful. And yeah, very clever, because she leaves the key in, and obviously, Peyton would have been stuck in there for longer if she had taken the key with, but she's just a kid. This is already a lot for her to be. Yeah, but so she doesn't lie very convincingly to mommy, but she's good at, making Peyton think something that isn't true. And it's, again, it's such a it's a believable lie. Yeah, Joe's in his crib. He's a kid. Whereas, he's a baby. Of course he's in this. If he's either going to be in his crib or being held by someone or something, or stroller, I guess. But why would he be in a stroller right now? So yeah. And yeah, logs in and carries Joey away. Just yeah. And let's see. Then they yeah. So Claire does get up, and they all end up in the attic, and she's got a knife and tries to stab. And then I will say, Claire, hypothetically, you might end up in this situation again. You should probably get better at judging how much range your weapon needs, because like there were other, like, that wasn't the only fire poker. Why was there a fire poker in there? There wasn't a fireplace in there, was there? Because like the kids' room, why would there be a fire? Whatever. There were multiple fire pokers in there, but yeah, very clever. The lock, you think, oh, that's gonna stop it, but no, she smashes a big enough hole, and then she can unlock it. She's not the master of unlocking, but once you have the key, it's not that difficult. I love the fucking misdirect of like, oh, Emma, no, if you have no way out of there, and Peyton is gonna hear the cries of Joey, and then she goes in there, and we're like, oh no, this is a sad ending, and then we see the fucking baby monitor, I think they call it in America. Yeah, wonderful, because like, we knew there was a baby monitor earlier. Peyton used it to spy on them, and there was the mention of batteries, and Emma understood how the baby monitor works, so she just wonderful. And of course, once Peyton smashes it, she can hear the actual baby crying, and it turns out Solomon is up there, and he's trying to protect, and he turns his back, and he just fucking tanks those hits. Like, motherfucker, you are... Oh my god, that's, yeah, so fucking badass. I really love that this would have been, like, they could so easily have had him, like, feel kind of pathetic and, like, cry from the pain or something. Like, that would have been understandable. And I appreciate, it is a little bit of a trope, like the indestructible, person with some sort of disability. Is also, but ultimately, he is like one of the most heroic and good, um, morally good individuals in the entire film. I have been talking for so fucking long. I'm almost done. Okay. Yeah. Can you tell I'm fucking passionate about this movie? Jesus. Um, been percolating my fucking head for uh, 25 years, I think. Anyway, yeah, the probably more. Moving on. What was the other thing? Yeah, so they all end up in the attic, and the fucking monologue Peyton gives, like, it's so pitch perfect, and just like Rebecca De Mornay nails it. It's so fucking good. The entire thing, and the way that she just lays out, she's not talking about like this is again. I've talked about how the movie, takes women seriously. This is the kind of thing where if it was like men, if you gender swap the various characters, the nanny would then be talking about like, I'm gonna torture you. They'll never find your body, something like that. But the fact that she doesn't even say that she's going to kill her. She says, your your infant thinks of me as providing milk. Your husband is fucking me. And let's see, the yeah, and when push comes to shove, you can't even breathe. And that's again where yeah, she is ableist. That is a very ableist thing to say. And I wish the movie itself was never ableist. Obviously, it is somewhat towards Solomon, but I do appreciate, like, yeah, the character who's openly ableist is the villain, whereas the Bartells, the good family, suburban bliss, they all treat Solomon well. Like the only time that Solomon is treated badly is when the evil, outsider tricks them into doing so. I think that pretty much. Um, hmm. Right. Yes. The thing with Emma, it is obviously scary for a parent if their kid starts to love someone else more than them. So that's also, and it's so well done. The part where they're like, okay, so better day. They're having Solomon go out on job. So if you see him, you don't have to be afraid of him. And she's like, I'm not afraid of Solomon, because to her it's like, what are you even saying right now? You're making no sense. First you get rid of him. Now you're talking about like how I'm supposed to be afraid of him. Like, what do you mean? And so she lets go of their hands and runs up, oh, Peyton, So yeah, very nice. And it's that thing of like, yeah, it's easy for Peyton to be the good guy. She doesn't have to, she doesn't seem to fucking care if Emma is traumatized by these movies, And let's see. I think it is kind of fun that so I already mentioned the thing with the bully. There was a thing in like the 90s, I think it was the 80s, where like the interloper, someone would like, obviously, like, we don't want them to remain the part of this family unit for the entire movie, but like they're gonna do something, someone in that vein, to help one of their kids. And like we're sitting there thinking like, okay, so they're not all bad, I guess. That was just a fucking thing. um I don't know, is it a spoiler? I think I'll abstain from I'll plead the fifth and not give examples of other, but yeah. um think that does pretty much cover. Let's see. Yeah, I love how much of the climax it's cleverness. Solomon was helping the family without Peyton even knowing he was there. That's clever. Emma with the locked door and the baby monitor, clever. And Claire pretending to be having an asthma attack. And yeah, I think that does cover everything. Just, yeah, fantastic. Oh, right. Love that they play straight the cliche. I suppose at the time maybe it wasn't as played out as it is today, but yeah, the police, the police are called and they're like, they show up right after everything has been resolved. It's like if you had been there just a few minutes earlier, you might have been able to help. But yeah, it's just the fact that they show up immediately after is, that's the part that's ridiculous. They do have the cops show up, but only right after they could accomplish anything at all there. Now, that does cover nearly everything. Yeah. I think, let's see. Yeah, I think that is absolutely fabulous and everything. Yeah. Um, let's see. If I haven't belabored the point, let me just note. So for a lot of the movie, Michael is useless, and then there at the end, like, yeah, he would have dominated, obviously, the climax if his legs were not broken. So when he is finally able to, you know, yeah, he's taken out because it's not his movie. It's not really a man's movie. It's women's. It's yeah. That's the idea at least. Again, obviously, as a cis man, I can't completely judge but that appears to be the idea. And yeah, it's one of those things. Like if he had trusted her more, listened to her more, he could probably have helped earlier, but in a lot of movies, he would be the one to resolve the climax with his, strength and such. But he does actually, yeah, it's Claire who accomplishes the, yeah. I think that might more or less cover, yeah, the, I think. Right. I also appreciated the way that they actually spend. It's not terribly long. It's not too long. But yeah, we don't just see like ambulance pulling up to the Bartell. No, they struggle to. There's like the O2's not doing it. Give me some O3 and let's see. Yeah. Um, I'm probably reading too much into it, but am I the only person who thinks that because there's a line, Marlene shows up and says, "Every time I see Joey, it's like he's a different person." Isn't that a subtle nod to the fact that the kid was played by, I want to say, triplets?